from the Car Shield studio, this is the opening drive on 101 ESPN.
And welcome to the opening drive. Brooke Grimsley here alongside Matthew Rocchio. And back in this Monday, we have BK. Welcome back, BK. We're going to have you just about every Monday.
Yeah,
I feel
it feels like this is just
point.
becoming a new thing for us. It's been fantastic. Good to be here with you, Brooke. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How was your weekend?
It was good. It was good. We spent a lot of time with Old Man. His new favorite thing on Saturday mornings is to go to a bakery and just completely wreck the place. So it's
now,
been a good time.
when you say wreck the place, are you saying like eat a lot of food or
all the above?
running around?
Yeah, we decide we're going to eat all of the food until we no longer want to eat the food. Now we throw everything on the ground and then put the workers to work in that way. So yeah, it's a blast. 1-year-olds, for any of you that have one, they are both the most fun thing that you can possibly have in your life and also terrifying and exhausting, all bundled into one thing of joy.
So there's just some baristas around Midtown St. Louis who just absolutely hate you.
Well, not Midtown, but the St. Charles area.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay. They're listening this morning. They're like, I remember.
We go to Sucrose out in St. Charles. It's a fantastic place, and we love them. They're great. And also, we apologize. On behalf of my son, Luca, we
are
apologize.
very sorry. Can you confirm or deny at a certain age or a certain point? I'm sure you come in with a lot of ideas of things that you want to do as a parent.
Sure,
and then it
course.
turns into kind of survival mode of we just need to keep this thing alive.
Yeah, so it's very much you go into everything with a plan. It's old Mike Tyson quote, right? Everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth. Well, Luca repeatedly punches us in the mouth, and we just find a way to get up off the mat. And this is why I've said before, like, hey, I don't judge anybody's parenting style. As long as you're going out there doing the best thing you can, that's all you can do. Just on an everyday basis, you wake up and say, we're going to do this again, and hopefully we do our best. That's all you can do.
Offer them love and take them to a bakery and let them destroy it.
Exactly.
All right. Well, it wasn't a great weekend for the Cardinals. Of course, we have to get into everything that happened.
They
the Cubs
also punched me in the mouth over the weekend.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I think a lot of fans are feeling that this morning. It was a very disappointing series, BK. That's the best way to put it. The Cubs taking 3 out of 4, and honestly, they could have really swept the series if it wasn't for that mistake in Game 3 a little bit later on. I come away from this feeling not great because this was a chance you added at the trade deadline, Tommy Pham and Eric Fedde, which we'll get into Eric Fedde's debut here in a little bit, but you added at the trade deadline, and this was the response. You also have an injury to Michael Siani, which is a huge loss defensively for this team, and actually his bat was starting to come together, but I come away not feeling great from this whatsoever because this is a Cubs team that's like a sub-500 team, and you came away only winning 1 game.
You can't feel much more disappointed coming out of that one. And really, this has been the theme since that Royals doubleheader. The day that they lost that doubleheader against the Royals, it felt like the wind came out of their sails. Because then they have that series against Chicago before the All-Star break. Had really 1.5 good games there. And otherwise, like, it was basically a one-off of a couple of good days coming out of the trade deadline against the Rangers from you feeling like, oh boy, is this thing headed in the wrong direction right now? Brooke, the Cardinals started this season 15-24. And then they had a great stretch. We were all citing hey, since Mother's Day, they're the best team in the National League, right? They go 33-18 over their next 51 games after a horrid start to the season. And since then, they're 9-13. They have basically lost all ground that they made up in the wild card because the teams around them are playing so much better. The Diamondbacks are on an absolute heater right now. The Padres rotation looks like it's a force to be reckoned with. Their bullpen is even better than it was before because of what they added at the deadline. These teams have like one way that is clear and defined that they will beat you this specific way. What I saw over the weekend with the Cardinals was a team that right now, this can change, but right now does not have much of an identity.
Yes.
They're not a great defensive club without Michael Siani in center field. They do not have a great rotation. They do not have a lot of swing and miss coming out of that bullpen any longer. They don't have any one thing that I can look at and say, okay, that's what the Cardinals do well. And if they're going to be able to get back into this wild card race again, that's what they have to develop. They've got to find, okay, this is our thing. And right now, they don't seem to have that unless the other team loses the game. They got handed that one on Saturday instead of taking it away from the Cubs.
Exactly. And the big thing is we can talk about pitching, but offensively, where is the pop from this team? Where is the power coming from? Also, being able to capitalize in clutch situations. Yesterday, they go hitless with runners in scoring position, 0 for 4. Oof. And then in the 4-game series, the Cardinals went 3 for 25 with runners in scoring position. What does that tell you about this group? Because it's not like it's just limited to just this one series. I feel like we've talked about that a lot with this group.
Yeah, and this is something that teams go through during the course of a season, but it feels like it's happening too much with the Cardinals this year, where they just go through these stretches and they don't come through in clutch situations. And some of that is the players that are coming up. So this gets into some of the managerial decisions from the weekend, Brooke. I did not think this was a great Ollie Marmol series. In fact, I thought there were a couple of instances in which Ollie Marmol, who I think has done a pretty good job for the vast majority of the season, I think he's been a good manager overall. This weekend, I did not think that he did particularly well in giving his team the best chance to be able to win. So Friday night is the one that a lot of people are going to be pointing to, and that was the pinch hit situation with Brandon Crawford. 8th inning, down 5-3, bases loaded, 2 outs. Hector Neris is on the bump.
It is there for the taking. Can we take it in game 2? Struck him out. Neris strikes out Crawford. There's the biggest out of the game, recorded by the Cubs pitching staff.
That's what it sounded like on both Bally Sports Midwest and on the Cubs radio network. They don't come through in that spot because I thought they put the worst player possible into the moment.
But BK, the history, though. The history, right?
Let's take a listen. Here is what Ollie Marmol had to say to Katie Woo on why he went with Brandon Crawford in that spot.
What did you like about Crawford in the situation there in the 8th?
The history, more than anything. I mean, this is a guy that is going to stay away from Carp and Siani. Crawford stays on the ball well. He's 5 for 7 off of him. Didn't work out.
Okay, so first of all, he brought up Carp and Siani, 2 of the options, technically, that you could have gone with in that spot. Did not bring up Nolan Gorman, who was available off of the bench in that situation. Interesting. He then says Brandon Crawford has a good history against Hector Neris. Can we go ahead and critique that decision based upon Ollie Marmol's own evidence as to why he went with Brandon Crawford there? Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, Brandon Crawford's most recent at-bat against Hector Neris took place 5 years ago in 2019. Now think about the other things that were taking place in Major League Baseball back in 2019. Most notably, Steven Strasburg helped the Washington Nationals win the World Series that year. So maybe things have changed a bit over the last 5 seasons.
Started like 28 games this year so far, and the Nationals are really rolling.
Yeah, for sure. That same year, they had another starter by the name of Patrick Corbin, who was fantastic. He is now the worst starter in Major League Baseball, and the Nationals could not do anything to unload his contract. I am shocked that that was the evidence that Ollie Marmol went with as to why he decided to use Brandon Crawford in that spot. I thought he was the worst hitter that you could have used. I would have stuck with Siani. He's batting .300 in July. He was 1 for 2 with a walk in that game. He's been a good hitter for the last month and a half or so.
I was shocked as well because in that situation, I was hoping that maybe there was a different reason other than the past history because I knew that that would probably be part of the discussion. But to hear Ollie admit that it was the past history in that situation, and it's been so long in between that time. Here's the thing, though. Probably in his mind, it has worked out recently. Remember, he did that with Matt Carpenter here not too long ago. So he probably thought he's been pushing the right buttons with those situations lately. Maybe it would pay off again. But this was such an important series for the Cardinals to be able to really gain some ground when it comes to the wild card race and also just to make sure that you can make the playoffs because the schedule does not get any easier here for the Cardinals, and you needed to be able to gain some ground in this situation. So I was very surprised by that. And I'm surprised, too, that they're starting to lose a lot more trust in Nolan Gorman. I guess I shouldn't say that I'm surprised, but I think it tells you more in that situation, don't you, that he wouldn't look to Nolan Gorman in that situation. I mean, you listed other possibilities, but what is happening to Nolan Gorman in the eyes of the Cardinals at this point where they can't even trust him in those situations?
It's strange. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Gorman's been pretty decent against splitters over the course of his career, not just this year, but overall in old site history and current, to go with Ollie Marmol's evidence there that he used for Brandon Crawford. Crawford, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I didn't understand this decision in any possible way. Crawford using 5-year-old metrics. People are texting out on the text line. I knew this was going to come. Oh, analytics ruining the sport. No, that's not an analytic. That is the opposite of what you would do if you're going based upon the numbers. Numbers people would tell you that is, not a good enough sample size. There were 7 at-bats in general to be able to utilize here as your source of evidence as to why you would go with Brandon Crawford there. And B, they're 5 years old. Like, that's not metrics-based decisions. That's a gut. That's a gut choice of, I believe in my guy. He's done well against this guy in the past. I think that's going to work. And so what I thought that Ollie went back to there was just, I don't really understand the decision-making process. I don't know that there was much of a process. And Ollie has talked in the past about how, hey, if I'm going to make a decision, it needs to work over time. It can't just be a one-time thing. You mentioned the Carpenter decisions that he's made, where he did cite some of the previous numbers against a specific pitcher. Well, there's also been evidence, and I can refer back to the quote from Ollie Marmol on this as well, where he says, I don't like using those kinds of numbers because over time they can lie to you. Because, a guy might be 5 for 7 against a certain pitcher, but how many of those 5 hits were hard hit? How many of them were like an expected batting average of 100 and they just happened to drop? Speaking of the game over the weekend where the Cardinals, if you looked at that hit by Nolan Arenado, it goes down as a hit. That wasn't a hit. That was it fell into the Bermuda Triangle and nobody was there to be able to catch it. No. So that's the kind of thing I don't understand as to the decision making. And it does tell you a lot about where they view Nolan Gorman right now. They are not trusting him at the plate at all. No,
because you even saw yesterday with Pedro Pages, you could have pitch hit Nolan Gorman in that situation. And that was another moment where they didn't do that. So I think there's a lot to talk about there with Nolan Gorman. Another decision, we'll get into that a little bit later in the show, but another decision this weekend, as we mentioned, Michael Siani is dealing with an oblique injury. It seems to be moderate, which in my mind, that means about 6 weeks. I'm not a doctor here, but you would assume about 6 weeks is what I would say for that. That's a huge loss for this team defensively. And in his place, they decided to call up Victor Scott II. Now, you could have said, what about Ivan Herrera, right-handed bat that you could have on your bench? What about even Jordan Walker, who's been heating up here lately? But is there somebody else, BK, that you thought that they could have called up in this situation other than Victor Scott II?
I didn't like this decision either. I'm normally not somebody that criticizes like all of the decisions that the Cardinals make. I think they get sometimes some unfair criticism for some of this stuff. I don't like the way that they've been managing this roster for the last month or so. I don't understand the Ivan Herrera stuff, why they still have him down, why they took him down in the first place. Guys, look at the numbers against Pedro Pages, by the way, behind the plate. Teams are running wild against him. I think it's 14 for 16 recently over the last few weeks. So the whole reason that Ivan Herrera is down is because of the running game, and that is now starting to go rampant once again against Pedro Pages. Doesn't make sense to me, but we'll set that aside for a moment. Even if you go away from Herrera because you don't want 3 catchers on the roster, Luken Baker could have been an option. I don't think he really has a spot on this roster. He's exclusively a DH, and they like using other guys in that spot. So it really comes down to Jordan Walker, Victor Scott, or Thomas Saggese. 2 of those 3 are right-handed hitters. Jordan Walker is starting to heat up once again. I would wait on him. I would not have brought him up just yet. I want to see if this is real. I want to see if you can get this over like a 2, 3, 4 week stretch before they decide to call him up. I would have gone with Thomas Saggese. When asked at the trade deadline if it was getting close to time to call up Jordan Walker, John Mozeliak mentioned, without being prompted, Thomas Saggese's name is the guy that has been the hottest hitter down in AAA. He's a right-handed bat, can play second, third, or shortstop for you, has positional versatility. If you really needed him to, I'm guessing he could probably go out there in the outfield for you if he gets a little bit of work. I would have done that. And people will say, well, BK, then you have to make a move on the 40-man roster. Yes, and that's the job. That's the job. You've got to be able to manage this. Jose Fermin doesn't have a role on this team if you're going to bring up a guy like a Thomas Saggese. So you could just DFA Jose Fermin. And if somebody picks him up, so be it. Thank you for your service, Fermin. We appreciate it. We're going to go our separate ways. They just did that with Giovanni Gallegos because they needed a better option. That would have been the route that I decided to go to here. And I would have said, you know what? We're going to live with what it looks like with Loris Nootbaar in center field for the foreseeable future.
You see, it actually made a lot of sense to me because with Victor Scott II, him coming up, it's more about the base running, and so he can pitch in certain situations. He can pitch run in certain situations, and defensively, you know that he can do well. So I didn't see too many problems with that, but I think that there's a bigger point here to what you're talking about, which is managing the 40-man roster, which there's a lot of questions with that, because that was my first question. I like Thomas to JC, but then I was like, well, there's not a spot for him right now. They would have to make some changes in the 40-man roster. Do you even look at Brandon Crawford? I know that they're not going to part with their older veterans, but also this bench, though, don't you think this bench needs a little bit more right now?
I do. I think they need a right-handed bat. Tommy Pham's playing every day now. So that the whole thing that they needed, which was the right-handed bat coming off of the bench, they don't have it. They decided voluntarily to put that into their regular lineup, which makes sense. Tommy Pham's one of your best players right now and has been since the deadline. But if you're going to go that route, now you once again lack a right-handed option on the bench for a very left-handed heavy team.
And you called up Victor Scott II, who
was
is
a left-handed
bat. Yes.
It didn't make sense to me. And you get into these spots like yesterday where Pedro Pages is coming up late in a big situation, and you're not going to your bench, which is full of left-handed bats, against a right-handed pitcher. Why? Because you don't want to lose your designated hitter, which was Wilson Contreras yesterday, and you don't want to have to play the National League style game. I don't know why, because it's only 2 more innings that you have to do that. The odds of it even coming back to that spot were not significant. But even if they do, you could go to one of the lefty bats later on. I digress. You could have made this work with a third option there, catching-wise, if you wanted Ivan Herrera to be the guy. And then you don't have to make that 40-man move that we just referenced. Or you can go with Thomas JC, who's a right-handed bat, fills this need that they have, and he has a bunch of positional versatility. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I do not understand it. I get that they like the defense and center, but if Victor Scott's going to be playing like 2-3 times a week, maybe, I would have just left him in AAA and gone with a guy that can help me more.
We're going to dive into this a lot during the show today. That's BK, I'm Brooke. And coming up next, we have our 3 things that we love from this weekend. Obviously, it's not the Cubs series. We'll discuss that coming up next here on 101 ESPN. BK here in for Randy Kerber, who has the day off, and we have our 3 things that we love from this weekend. BK, why don't you kick it off for us?
All right, let's start with number 3.
Number 3.
I've got this figured out now. It only took me like a month, but my 5th time filling in, we have got this 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
For number 3, man, the White Sox, they are something special, aren't they? They have lost
that's a word for
20 consecutive games. Guys, do you know how hard that is?
Yes.
Baseball is a sport where the worst team in the league in any 3-game series can go in and legitimately have a chance to win 2 out of 3, unless your name is the Chicago White Sox in our the year of our Lord 2024. They are 27-87 now on the season. The last time a team was this bad at this point in the season, Brooke, was the 1916 Philadelphia Athletics. The Tigers have the fewest wins of any teams in a 162-game season. They did so with 43 wins back in 2003. I think there is a very real chance, in fact, a likelihood, that the White Sox are going to beat that record, one that nobody wants to have, and finish with 40 or fewer wins on the year. This is a historic level of ineptitude.
I think that they will. It's absolutely terrible. Even this weekend, I don't know if you saw, they were close to maybe they had a lead in the game, and then they just absolutely imploded. I don't know what to think about the White Sox and everything they're doing. I understand that teams tank and they're rebuilding, all the different kind of stuff, but I don't understand the direction that they're going in, because even for next year, they can't even pick higher than 10th, right?
It doesn't make sense. This team is not just like funny bad. They are just bad.
It's
They're not.
sad.
They're sad at this point to watch, and they don't really have much of a future. There's not a lot of guys on this roster that you look at, you're like, okay, well, at least they have X, Y, or Z. It's basically Garrett Crochet, and even for him, it sure seems like they're going to trade him in the offseason. It is rough.
Yeah, it is really, really bad. Kind of sad and depressing. So number 3 for me will be Simone Biles. I can never talk enough about Simone Biles and just her dominance. She is the greatest Olympian, in my opinion, of all time. Greatest athlete of all time. You can put her in all those categories. She's up there at the top of the conversation. Greatest gymnast of all time, obviously, with all the gold medals that she has collected. And she's not done just yet. She was able to win a gold medal in the vault on Saturday, and that was her 3rd gold medal of the Paris Games, and she's wrapping things up today. So she has a chance to win even more. I never get tired of watching her and her dominance. I hope that she will continue to compete. She was asked that this weekend if she will compete in the 2028 Olympics, and she said, well, I am getting up there in age. No, Simone Biles, you are a different human being. You're on a different level, a different stratosphere of everything that you're able to accomplish. So I am not tired of seeing her dominance and what she's done for the gymnastics world.
She's 27 years old, right?
I believe so, yeah.
I think I saw the other day she's the oldest gymnast to medal, I think, ever, if I'm not mistaken, in a certain event. 27 years old.
Yep.
We'll see what ends up happening for 2028. All right, for number 2.
Number 2.
The NFL puts out their list of the top 100 players each and every season, and it's fantastic. It's always great fodder right around this time of the year. Now, for those that aren't familiar with how the voting process works, the players are the ones that vote on this list, and they're asked right around Thanksgiving, heading into the final few weeks of the season, hey, can you go through this list, rank what you think would be like the best players in the league right now, and then they construct what is their ultimate top 100 players in the NFL based upon those votes. Well, this year, those votes put Tyreek Hill at number 1, Lamar Jackson at number 2, Christian McCaffrey at number 3, and the guy that won the Super Bowl as the quarterback for the 2nd consecutive year, and everybody agrees, including Jamar Chase, who hates him so much because he beats him, that he won't even say his name. Patrick Mahomes came in at number 4 on the list of the top 100 players in the NFL.
How?
Now, Brooke, we all agree there is one player that is the best player in the league right now, and it is one Patrick Mahomes. The best thing about a list like this is that Mahomes absolutely saw it, he absolutely cares about it, and he's absolutely going to go scorched earth this season because of it. Now, in the past 2 weeks, he has had the Raiders have some 7th-round rookie go up to a fan with a puppet that looks like Patrick Mahomes playing with that. And he got asked about it. He said it'll get handled when it's handled. And now he has this And last season stunk. It was not fun for anybody to watch because his receivers were so putrid. And now they've added Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy. Oh, boy. If you're playing fantasy football this year, I would try to get as much Patrick Mahomes as you possibly can because that man is going scorched earth on the NFL in 2024.
I can't wait. Even when I saw the video of his reaction to the Kermit puppet that they had in the practice, you could tell that he was kind of serious about it. Like he was kind of joking it off a little bit, but you could tell he was very serious about it. That list to me honestly felt like rage bait. Did it not? And look, I'm not trying to take away anything from Hill. Hill is exceptionally talented. He's super talented. But come on now. With everything, especially with what Mahomes did last year, where nobody thought that they were going to be able to pull that off.
Well, the reason is, and like it, if you want me to actually break down the list, the reason why he was so low is because the Chiefs stunk offensively last year for the vast majority of the season. And the votes were taking place around Thanksgiving, and the Chiefs stunk around Thanksgiving. The offense couldn't move the football. So honestly, to have him at number 4 is probably a little high relative to what happened for the first 3.5 months of the season. But that's not the point. I'm here to tell you that Mahomes is going to use this as fuel for the 2024 season. And if you ever are asked who is the best player in the NFL throughout the majority of Patrick Mahomes' career, basically 2018 onward, the answer is Mahomes until proven otherwise.
This might be stupid. Relative to the rest of the league at their position, was Chris Jones better than Patrick Mahomes for the majority of the regular season last year?
Probably. The hard thing is, like, I don't even know how to evaluate Mahomes last year because, like, it didn't matter what he did.
No.
His receivers were so awful that they never even gave him a chance. It'd be like trying to evaluate him in that Super Bowl where he had 3 starting offensive linemen that were out, including both tackles. Like, good luck. It was one of the greatest games I've ever seen a player play. But it didn't matter because he was running for his life from the moment that the ball was snapped. So.
Yeah. So number 2 for me, and I know that you're going to touch on this too, so I'm not trying to steal your thunder, but it's just more of the story of how it happened with Noah Lyles and his photo finish in the men's 100 meter, the closest finish since 1980. And if you watch what happened in that situation, at first they didn't think that he won it. And
you want to play the audio real quick because I've got the call. They called the wrong guy as the winner.
Yes, because of how close it was. So this is the audio of it. Do you have it, Rockio?
There's an Olympic gold medal waiting for somebody who wants it the most. Now Thompson starts to wind up. Curley's going with him. This is close. Jamaica's going to do it. Keshane Thompson is a gold medalist on debut.
And it's just really crazy because then when you actually look at the photo, what was the difference? It was his torso. So it was the torso that was the thing that pushed him over, because if you look, you saw, the other guy, his head was a little bit over more. There was even a foot that was a little bit over more. But that shows you the attention to details and the practice behind the scenes of knowing that you needed the torso to be able to push you over. That was such a huge moment. And also it was the first time an American sprinter has won the 100 meters in 20 years, excuse me. So that was just a huge moment for him in that situation. And I love those close photo finishes.
And this dovetails into my number 1. Which was Noah Lyles, who is the fastest man in the world officially. And Noah Lyles is one of my favorite people in this year's Olympics. He is a guy that is trying to put the sprinting world, really, but specifically American sprinting on the map. He made the comments after last year, I believe it was the World Championships, where he said, I watched the NBA Finals and they've got world champion around them. World champion of what? You are the world champion of America? And it made the rounds, and now NBA fans are, I think, kind of tongue-in-cheek and also maybe a little bit not so tongue-in-cheek, mad at Noah Lyles because he said, oh, cool, you're this world champion because you go over to the Olympics, blah, blah, blah. It actually has put sprinting on the map. Like, it did what he was intending on doing, which is to make him a story, make sprinting more of a story. He wanted to get in the headlines, and he did. Lyles has an unbelievable showmanship about him. He's fun as hell to watch out there. He is constantly looking for the camera, and for many people, they don't like it. That's fine, totally fair, but I love it. I love it. I love the fact that he is somebody that is just going to go out there and enjoy every moment of what he's been a part of. He was a 200-meter sprinter. Now he has won the 100-meter championship as well. He's going for the 200, I believe, later on today. What a story, and as Brooke mentioned previously, it is the closest 100-meter final in at least the last 40 years, possibly ever, because we've only been tracking down to this 1,000th of a second in recent years because we didn't have the technology to do so previously. So it's entirely possible. We just witnessed the closest 100-meter final ever in the history of the Olympics, and Noah Lyles, the U.S. Olympian, is officially the fastest man in the world.
And he deserves it.
Absolutely.
That was such an exciting finish. Also, I never get tired of seeing the moment that they go celebrate with their family that's in the stands. That moment with his mom embracing him, that was just so sweet to see. So now for the number one. You want to go ahead?
Oh, that was
your number one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I forgot. I stole your thunder with that one.
It's all good.
Excuse me.
It was the biggest story from the weekend.
You would think that I would be used to this by now. So my number one will be Scottie Scheffler winning Olympic gold in Paris. He also was very emotional in the end there. If you include this, he has won 7 tournaments this year. What a year it has been for Scottie Scheffler, and he deserves a lot of credit. He shot a 62 in the final round with no bogeys to get that incredible feat in that situation there. And I was just thinking about earlier this year, we were kind of talking about Dan when we had him on, and Randy, about how he's not that exciting a player. You know, he's not high energy. He doesn't show a lot of emotion. And then look at how much we've talked about him this year and everything that he's accomplished, even everything that happened in Kentucky.
Yep.
That was one of the wildest situations, and it really didn't affect him whatsoever. So a lot of credit to him, and you could tell that it really meant a lot to him, too.
He was emotional as he was hearing the national anthem.
Yeah.
He got emotional afterwards. It was a really cool scene out there. I also loved, I think it was Rory who came out and said, hey, this means everything. And you can tell that it means everything to all of these guys because there's no purse on the line. He said the two things, the two tournaments that mean the most to guys are the Olympics now and the Ryder Cup. So between those two, you really see the guys that want to put on for their home countries. And this was the latest example of that. Really impressive by Scheffler, and it's been one hell of a year for him. For people that aren't golf fans, I feel like they have now become more invested, more interested in Scottie Scheffler, which was not the case as recently as like 5 months ago.
No, not whatsoever. All right, that was our 3 things from this weekend. Coming up next, does this Cardinals team have it in them to win 30 of their next 50 games? We'll talk about that next, coming up here on 101 ESPN.
Summertime is the best time to enhance the appearance of your home.
This is Rocky with your Sports Center update, driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Cardinals dropped 3 of 4 against the Cubs. Eric Fetty also makes his debut over the weekend. Not a great weekend for the Cardinals, and they'll try to bounce back today with an odd one, as they'll have a makeup from a May rainout against the Mets this afternoon. A 4:15 first pitch, and it'll be Andre Palante facing off against Sean Manaea for the Mets. Manaea on the season 7-4 with a 3.50 ERA. That is your Sports Center update, driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
You have to take it day by day, series by series. The season is winding down. Looking at the standings, it's looking like you're probably going to need about 86 wins to get in. So we have a lot of teams that are really good and ahead of us. So we're going to have to win about 30 more games, it's just to even stand a chance. So we need to catch some streaks.
That was Tommy Pham on the Cardinals needing to pick up not just some wins, but possibly even building up a winning streak here to get ahead of some of the teams ahead of them. Brooke and BK here. Now, I definitely agree with him, because if you look at this past weekend, this was a huge chance for them to gain some momentum. After the trade deadline, I thought they had a really good series against the Rangers. It felt like you had some things popping offensively, and that could be, just the trade deadline. You get Tommy Pham back, just kind of changes the dynamic in the room a little bit. But at the same time, things are getting pretty tough for the Cardinals schedule-wise. So these next 9 games, BK, I think are really some of the most important for them. So you have the makeup game today against the Mets. Then you have 3 versus the Rays, 3 versus the Royals, 3 versus the Reds. And then after that, guess who you're facing? A really tough gauntlet of teams. You have the Dodgers, the Brewers, the Twins, the Padres. So these next 3 games, or 9 games, I believe is a huge chance for them to really build up some momentum. And things are not going to get easier from here for them.
Yeah, according to some of the numbers, the Cardinals have a top 4 strength of schedule remaining this season. The only contender that has a more difficult remaining strength of schedule is Kansas City. The others in the top 4, Tampa Bay and Colorado, both of whom have essentially opted out of the 2024 season without officially being eligible to do so. And then it's the Cardinals. The Cardinals have one of the most difficult strengths of schedule remaining, and today's a big one. Going up against the Mets, with where you're both at right now in the National League wildcard standings, this is quietly a really important game for the Cardinals to be able to go out there and win, and they've got Andre Palante on the mound to be able to do so. I think my concern, Brooke, right now, and I've probably been one of the more optimistic people on the station about the Cardinals in this season, is that I don't really know what their one thing is that gets them over the top. Like, I can look at some of the other teams that are in this wild card race, and I can say to myself, okay, the Padres have a dominant bullpen and a really good front end of their rotation. The Arizona Diamondbacks, when healthy, have a fantastic rotation, and all season long have been one of, quietly, the best offenses in the sport. What is that thing for the Cardinals? Like, what can I look at every single night and say, they do this exceptionally well? I think for a period of time, it was the up-the-middle defense. They were really good with shortstop and center field specifically, and that was kind of their quote-unquote thing. Well, now Michael Siani is out, possibly for the rest of the season, depending on how long this oblique injury is going to be nagging at him. And I don't know if that is their thing. So how do they win 29 of the remaining 50 games, which would get them to the 86 wins that Tommy Pham was referencing there? I don't know, man. It's a difficult strength of schedule. I don't feel great about the team right now. They need this offense to come through. Like, they need to develop that one thing, and I think the most likely thing for them is the offense. And right now, it's kind of hard to look at the offense and the way that they performed over the weekend and say that's particularly likely.
Don't you think, too, with how the starting rotation was built at the beginning of the season, when you had all the players in there, of course, don't you think that it was built to where this offense could produce like 4 or 5 runs consistently, and that you needed more from this team offensively? And it all goes back, and I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here, but it all goes back to Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt, doesn't it?
It does. Everything about this team for this season goes back to those two, because they're making a combined $60 million, which is a third of your payroll this year. And when you're paying those guys that kind of money, they're paying them that to perform. Goldie's been better lately. Arenado's come through with a couple of big hits, but there's also been a lot of spots over the weekend, especially where it feels like he's coming up in the biggest possible moment and not coming through with one of those clutch hits. You look at what they did over the weekend with runners in scoring position. It's not hard to see how they lose 3 out of 4 in that series. They go 3 for 25 with runners in scoring position. Boom, that's it. Like, that's the only stat I need from the weekend. If you had just gone into it and you said, BK, Cardinals go 3 for 25 with runners in scoring position, how's the weekend going to go? I would have said they got swept.
Yeah.
They probably lose all 4 games, and you look back on it and say that could be a turning point in the season. They did end up winning one of those games, and it was because the Cubs handed it to them. And if that's the kind of way that this team's going to perform under pressure the rest of the way, that's just not going to work, man.
No.
It's not going to work.
It's not. And it's about finding an identity for this team, which it feels like they've been searching for all year long. So what do you think is the one thing, and I know that Michael Siani's out of the equation, but what is the one thing that you think is the strength of this team currently?
I don't think they have one. That's what I'm saying. Like, they currently do not have a trump card. I can look at the Diamondbacks and say they've got an offense that on any given night, they could score 7 runs against you, and they bludgeon you to death. I could look at the Padres and say, hey, if you're going up against Dylan Cease, good luck. And if you're going up against any of their other pitchers, man, they're going to lock this thing down. You better score early because their bullpen is going to be nails late in a game. You look at some of these other teams that are in the race against you, like the Brewers this year, for the most part, have been an excellent offense, and they've got really good defense. The Phillies have everything, and the Dodgers have a 1-4 that's unmatched in the league when healthy. What is that thing for the Cardinals right now? It does not exist. And so that, to me, is what they have to develop. Like, they've got to find what that thing is now that Siani's out. It could be your bullpen, but
it was for the beginning of the season. The bullpen was a huge part of their success, and being able to keep them in things was the bullpen.
But they're bottom 5 in strikeout rate in Major League Baseball now.
Yeah,
like
it's dropped off.
Their
significantly.
bullpen doesn't have swing and miss stuff the way that many of these other elite teams do. The rotation is middle of the pack at best, and for the season, your offense is 18th in the league in OPS. You are middle. In any statistic that anybody wants to look at, they rank somewhere between like 12th and 25th. So I have nothing that I can point to and say, this is what they do at an elite level. And until I can, even if it's just for like a 2-week stretch, it's kind of hard to say this is how the Cardinals win 30 of the next 50 games. I don't know what that looks like. I would love to see it. It'd be amazing to watch, but do you have something that you can point to right now, Brooke, and say, like, this is how they do it?
Well, honestly, with Michael Siani, I thought that was a huge bright spot. Alec Burleson had a great month of July, and he was fantastic. But those are individual players that I'm talking about that have very great moments. It's hard to find something collectively where I can say, yes, the starting rotation gives me a lot of confidence moving forward. Maybe here down the stretch we can see, and Eric Fetty, that was just his debut. There's a lot that can factor into that.
He was good after the second inning.
Yes, and also with the starting rotation, there's still so many question marks around it. Miles Michaelis, it was not great for him this weekend. He's exactly who he is. He would be a 4. He should be a 4 or 5, essentially. And so his numbers reflect that. The starting rotation is not something I can look at. The bullpen, we are starting to see some cracks because I think of the usage that you had to do early on in the season and how they were able to really bend but not break. But at this point, you're starting to see some of the wheels fall off just a little bit. And I also think a weak spot for this team is their bench. And I don't know what you can do exactly to fix that moving forward.
I mean, you could make roster moves. They won't, though.
Yeah.
Because, like, if you wanted to, again, they're not going to do this. I think Brandon Crawford has basically filled the role that they wanted him to this year. He's been very good in the clubhouse. And if we're just being honest, like, since the first month of the season, he's been okay production-wise for the Cardinals. When he's been in there, he hasn't been a total liability. He's been okay defensively, and offensively he's been fine enough. But if you wanted to upgrade that spot, you potentially could, at least, with Thomas Ajayci. But you're getting very young. You're throwing him into the fire down the stretch with a wild card chase. And is that what you want to do? I don't know. If you wanted to, you could decide to drop down into the minor leagues as well and potentially take like an Ivan Herrera and bring him up for Matt Carpenter, who does not have a position.
Yeah.
They're not going to do that, though, because they like what Matt Carpenter brings to the clubhouse. And so they almost feel like they're kind of in this... They're stuck in the middle where they're so much interested in the veteran clubhouse leadership.
Yes.
And it is hindering their ability to use the players internally that they believe in the ways that you probably, quote unquote, should be utilizing them. So I don't know how you change that without changing your methods entirely. Like, it's a philosophical difference that they have that would allow them to potentially unlock the best usage of the roster. and they're not interested in changing that. And I'm not even necessarily saying they should or need to, but that's the one way you could improve the bench, and they're not. It's the one thing they're not going to do.
How much veteran leadership is too much veteran leadership, too? Because then you also have Tommy Pham. It seems like a lot of the conversation about him coming in was to help this clubhouse, which is fantastic. I get that. It's clubhouse does matter. I don't want to take away from that. The personalities matter. Remember, we heard Nolan Arenado last season talk about how there was too many young guys in the clubhouse.
I thought that was ridiculous.
Yes, it's very fair, but definitely a part of the conversation, because then look at what they did in the offseason after those comments, is that they really prioritize veteran leadership in the clubhouse. But then you also talk about bringing in Tommy Pham for his leadership in the clubhouse and kind of being that gritty guy, that rusty nail that can help this team. Why do we keep having to look at that in the clubhouse, you think?
So if you want me to be honest, like my personal belief is that they got those veteran guys because Nolan Arenado listens to veterans. I don't think that the veterans are there to be able to like guide the young players. I don't think Mason Wynn needs guiding. I don't think that Brendan Donovan needs guiding. I think Brendan Donovan is one of the leaders on the team.
Yes.
So I think sometimes it's very difficult for a young guy to come in and look at a $35 million player and say, you're not doing X, Y, and Z. And I think it's even more difficult for that $35 million player in Nolan Arenado to say, yeah, I should listen to that guy. But what becomes a little different is when one of your peers, Matt Carpenter or Brandon Crawford or Lance Lynn comes in, when they're in there, or Sonny Gray, and they're saying, hey, you're not doing X, Y, and Z. Well, now suddenly maybe Nolan Arenado starts listening to them. Or if they're saying, hey, Nolan, we need to be able to keep these guys a part of this. We need to have Brendan Donovan, Nolan Gorman, Mason Wynn, Alec Burleson, et cetera, feeling like they're a part of the team in a way that maybe they didn't a year ago. Well, maybe Nolan starts listening to that, and he's like, all right, I'll step back. I'll let them kind of do their thing, and hopefully it becomes the best for everybody. I think that's what those guys have built. That's what they've been a part of, is bridging the divide that existed a year ago between the veterans in place and the young players. I don't think that the young players needed like this saving. I think that the young players...
a savior to come in?
They needed like somebody to come in and be like, hey, Nolan, back off, let them do their thing. That's
like
my personal read on it, at least.
It's not like these guys have worked hard to get to this point or anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Self-starters, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning when you're like 14 years old to go work out in a cage, nothing there for these young guys.
I think leadership matters too, by the way. Like I'm not trying to suggest that they don't need any of this inside of the clubhouse. It's really important. And the reason why the Cardinals were able to get out of that 15 and 24 start is because they had guys that were all pulling in the same direction, and there wasn't finger pointing in the clubhouse this year the way that there was a year ago. And also they're just a better team and they don't have so many holes. But now that you are more than 110 games into the season, now it becomes about how do we maximize our roster? How do we win in the here and now? It's not about, hey, what's the marathon of the season look like any longer? Now it is a sprint to the finish, and I'm not sure that the Cardinals have the speed to be able to get to the end in a top 3 wildcard spot. And it's really, this weekend was one of the first times that I looked at it and I was like, I don't know. I don't know that they can do this.
Yeah, especially after trade deadline and when they were making those additions, I thought, okay, maybe against this series with the Cubs, how important this is. And this is not a good Cubs team, by the way. I know that there are some parts they added at the trade deadline, but this is not a great Cubs team, and they were still not able to come away with more than just one win. That's BK on Brooke. Coming up next, we have Take It or Leave It. So get your text into the Air Comfort Service text line. That is 314-399-9646, 314-399. Yo-ho! BK.
He's not going to do it. We can move forward.
Oh, come on. All right. Take It or Leave It is coming up next.
Take it or leave it.
Want to say something? Put it out there. If you like it, you can take it. If you don't, send it right back.
Get your text into 314-399-9646 and give us your take it or leave it.
Brought to you by Gloria Lou Realty. Visit GloriaHasTheBuyers.com and start packing.
That's my final offer. Take it or leave it.
Welcome back to the opening drive. Brooke and BK in for Randy Kerber today, and it is now time for Take It or Leave It. So get your text into the Air Comfort Service text line. That is 314-399-9646, 314-399. Yo-ho. BK will never do it, and it's fine.
It's your thing. It's your show to sing, and that's fine. I respect you for it. We sing Believe It or Not on the air.
That's such a beautiful
We've all got our own things.
That was a fantastic dodge, my man. Wow, step up in the pocket and avoid the rusher.
All right.
So here for it.
So it's time for Take It or Leave It. BK, why don't you start us off?
All right, guys, take it or leave it. I've been saying all offseason, there's no way whatsoever that Brandon Ayuk ends up getting traded prior to week 1 of the NFL season. And the reason why is because I don't believe that they're incentivized to do so. I thought the one time where it would have potentially made sense for the 49ers to deal Ayuk is right before the draft, because then you get an asset that can help you right now. Maybe you get a first-round pick in return, you pick the player, see if he can help you out in 2024. Well, that time has passed, and now, according to Matt Mayoko, I believe is how you pronounce his name, who has been covering the 49ers for a decade, quote, I've stated for a while that I didn't see any scenario in which the 49ers would trade him, but now I believe it's a legitimate option. In a lot of ways, the ball is in Ayuk's court. Brooke, take it or leave it. Brandon Ayuk, the star wide receiver for the 49ers, is traded prior to week 1 of the NFL season.
Ooh, I am going to take it because where there's smoke, there's fire. The fact that there's so many reports about this makes me believe that it's actually going to happen. Now, where he lands, I think that's the biggest question there. Browns, maybe. I think they're in the mix of the conversation. And some other teams, Steelers possibly. I'm more curious about where he would land. Do you take it?
I'm leaving it. I still don't believe they're going to do it. I don't think there's any reason to do it. There's no leverage here. Like when I look at these situations, I try to say who has the leverage in this spot. And to me, the 49ers still have the leverage. Brandon Ayuk is under contract this year for like $12 million. And if he doesn't play, he doesn't get that money. He's currently being fined $50,000 for every practice that he misses. Ooh. He made like $2 million each of his first 4 seasons in the NFL. This is not a wealthy individual by NFL standards. Missing out on games, missing out on checks is not a particularly bright way, in my opinion, to go about this. I think Brandon Ayuk will show up. I think he will play his butt off for the 49ers this year, and I think they're going to be one of the favorites to win the Super Bowl. So to me, I'm leaving it. I still don't see the reason why they would trade him for something that's not going to help them until next year, when their stated goal for this season is to win the Super Bowl. Yeah. This doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't whatsoever, but the fact that there's so many reports, and sometimes I know that the reports, it is. There's so many reports out there, and I understand that there's a game to the reports as well. BK, you know this. Sure. Sometimes things are floated out there to kind of maybe push things forward a little bit more, so maybe that's what's going on, but who knows. All right, take it or leave it. Tommy Pham needs to be mic'd up for more games.
Take it.
I absolutely loved the interview with him last night. One, I think he handled a lot of the situations really well, and I learned a lot more about him, especially through the fan questions. Did you listen to that portion of the interview? So when the fan questions come up, the first one is, well, if you could play a sport in the Olympics, which would it be? And he said, well, I can't run as fast as I did. And, I have been shooting during the off season. I'm like, he's picked up shooting during the off season. All right. Well, anyways, the following question, which I don't know if ESPN was trolling him or not, that the fact that they let this through was hilarious to me, where they asked him about fantasy football. If you lose, what should it be? What should the punishment be? And you could see Tommy Pham kind of like smirk at that question, because we know what happened with Tommy Pham in fantasy football. Everybody remembers what happened there. And he handled the question really well. I just thought it was really funny. He handled all the questions well, and I thought it was a great interview, honestly.
I appreciate that Tommy Pham will give a thoughtful response to whatever it is that your question is. Now, Tommy's not going to give you anything more than what he deems necessary in that answer. Mm-hmm. Like, it might be a 15-second answer, but it's going to be thoughtful. It's going to be his honest thoughts on whatever the question was. And if you ask him something that makes him think, he's going to think about it and give you his honest response to that. And that may sound simple, But for a lot of guys, they're just going to give you a canned answer. That is not Tommy Pham. You never know which direction he's going to take something. Like, he was asked about the offense and how they deal with the pressure of these final 2 months of the season. And that's where he gave listen, it's a long season, but now it's pretty short. We're running out of time. We need to win 30 of the next 50 games. Like, that's a really good answer. It's a thoughtful response. If you missed his post-game interview on Saturday after the game, I would check it out on the Valley Sports Midwest Twitter feed, because I thought it was one of the best 2.5-minute post-game availabilities that I've seen by a Cardinals player in years. It was just refreshingly honest and candid. He's one of my favorite players to talk to for all those different reasons.
It's candid, and it's not canned answers.
Nope.
It's very honest, whatever is on his mind. And that's what I like about him. And I think that's where some of the controversy comes in, because he doesn't have a filter.
Yes.
So he literally just says the first thing that comes to his mind. Rocc, what do we have on the text line?
I'm going to go with a quick one. Take it or leave it. Tommy Pham's preparing ahead of time for the next knife fight.
Apparently, take it.
Well, he's not bringing a knife to the knife fight anymore.
No,
if that's the
he's
case.
not going to be. He's not going under a weapon this time. Take it or leave it. This team is simply not good enough to overcome Ollie's decision making. Using a stat from 2018 to justify the Crawford pinch hit is inexcusable and insane.
I'm going to leave it because I think, generally speaking, he's been good this year. I criticize individual decisions from Ollie, not the job that Ollie has done. And I want to separate the two, because I think it's okay to have both, right? There can be individual segments where you guys may hate everything that we say. That doesn't mean that you think that we're terrible at our jobs. Now, maybe you also feel that way. Fair.
I was like, BK, you're opening the door for something there.
There could be two separate ways to look at something, the micro versus the macro. And overall, I think Ollie's done a good job this year, but I disagreed with the decision on Friday to pinch hit Brandon Crawford in that spot. And I didn't like leaving Pedro Pajes in yesterday to hit for himself in a 2-on, 2-out, down by 3, I believe it was, situation. So I'm going to leave this one.
I'm going to have to leave it too, because I do agree with you in that sense of he has made right decisions. He has pushed the right buttons. So you have to give credit when credit's due. It was just this weekend there were some decisions that really were questionable, but that happens during the course of a really long season. Really, really long season.
Take it or leave it. It's time to start benching Arenado or Goldie. It's crunch time, and they need wins. Just because of their history, it won't happen.
I mean, the problem is who you're going to bench him for.
Yeah.
I think Goldie's been better, so I'm definitely not benching Goldie right now. Who are you benching Arenado for? Like, they don't want to put Gorman in the game as a pinch hitter, so they're certainly not going to be starting him at third base. Yeah. So I'm going to leave it. I don't know what their alternative is right now.
I have to leave it too. Can you imagine if they did do that now?
Oh, it's over.
There's no other way to. You can move them back down the lineup maybe, which you could do that if that sends some sort of message. But other than that, I don't think there's anything you can do.
Take it or leave it. Anthony Richardson will be top 5 in MVP voting.
Man, I am
through like week 10 before he gets hurt.
I'm way out over my skis on my Anthony Richardson hype right now. Like, we saw, what was it, 6 quarters of football from Anthony Richardson last year?
Really good.
And I think 4 of them were like arguably the best quarters that I saw from any quarterback in the 2023 season. I'm gonna take it.
What?
If I'm drafting for fantasy this year, I am. Now, this is obviously different than real NFL football. I think he's going to put up bonkers numbers. Like, could rush for 10 touchdowns, throw for 25, and the Colts go like 10-7 this year, and people look at their roster and are like, I don't understand how this just happened. Throw him into the MVP conversation. I think he's going to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback this year. I think he's going to potentially finish top 5 in the MVP voting. I'm all in on Anthony Richardson. I think it's going to be a monster year for him.
Have you seen the AFC South outside of what the Texans did last year? It's usually like a dumpster fire. So I'm going to have to leave that.
I no longer feel that way about the division, though.
It has changed. Okay, I'll give you that. I'm not fully bought in on Anthony Richardson and the shoulder. Anytime with shoulder injuries like that and what he was dealing with, that concerns me with a quarterback. So I will leave that one. I don't think that's happening. And maybe that's my Titans bias also coming in.
I was about to say, I feel a little hate coming from that side of the room right now.
Look, the Titans and Colts don't. The Titans and Colts, no. We don't like each other.
Cardinals go 2-2 across this 4-game stretch at home.
So you got the Mets, and then what's the next series?
3
coming
against
up?
the Rays.
Give me 3-1. I'll go 3-1 with this stretch.
Really?
The Rays aren't very good right now. That's not a great team.
Yeah.
So I'll go 3-1.
You don't think Carlson revenge game?
Well, here's the problem, though. Tomorrow, the projected starter for the Rays is lefty Jeffrey Springs, who has pitched 3 2/3 innings this year. So he's probably going to go 7 scoreless against the Cardinals. So that's going to be bad on Tuesday. Taj Bradley in game 2, and then game 3, it's looking like Shane Baz. So. Yeah, they're going to get blanked by 2.
These games are not going to be fun to watch. It's going to be like 3-2, 4-1. I think I'll say 3-1 stretch over the next 4. I'll say leave it.
For the Cardinals?
I think they win 3 out of the next 4.
I'll take it. I don't know. I think that they still have some things to work on here.
I'll take 2-2 and be happy with it. Take it or leave it. Bagel bites over pizza rolls.
Ooh, I do love bagel bites
in years.
They suck.
Really?
I don't know if it's me getting older or them just like sapping any flavor that used to be in them. Bagel bites are the most tasteless thing in the world now, and it makes me very sad.
I used to love bagel bites, but I genuinely think the last time that I had one was when I was like 16 years old. So that was 15 years ago.
Not even college? Anything like that?
No. We were all in
ago.
on the pizza rolls in college. Like I ate plenty of pizza rolls in my time in Columbia, Missouri, but
there's still a lot of flavor in a pizza roll. It's not as good as it used to be.
They're objectively bad. But when it's 3 a.m. and you just got back from the piano bar and you had a bunch of $1 tequila shots, yeah, they're fine.
There's still flavor to them. Bagel bites. I had a pack of them like 3 months ago, and it was the saddest thing, and it made me cry.
Really?
It was horrible.
I'm gonna take it. I love bagel bites.
Do you still eat bagel bites like to this day?
It's been a while. I will admit. I've tried to stay on the healthier side. I think they're delicious. It's a little mini pizza. It's perfect.
I'm not saying the concept of them is not going to be better, but I'm telling you, as I ate actual bagel bites within the last 6 months and comparing them to how glorious they were when I was 16 or 12.
What was the situation in which you had bagel bites? I gotta know.
I was walking through Schnucks and they were on sale, and I was like, I'm an adult. I never got these as a child. I'm buying. You tell me every adult has that thing where you're walking through, you go, oh, what? Fruit roll-ups are on sale? Yeah, my mom never bought these for me. I'm doing this myself.
Good for you, man.
Treat me time. And so it was one of those times where bagel bites were on sale.
It was 1 a.m. You were playing NCAA 25, and you're like, all right, time to go for the bagel bites today.
For me, it's like I zombie home at 2:30 p.m. and before I fall asleep for a nap after this, I'm like, I just need to put some food in my system, and that's what it is.
Look, I like all of them, but preferably I would pick bagel bites. And now somebody says that I'm a serial killer because I picked bagel bites over pizza rolls. Come on, isn't that like the 3rd time somebody has accused me of being a serial killer for my food choices? Because I also like Oreos with peanut butter and dipping them in milk.
Never heard of that before. I'd try it.
It's delicious. What are you going to say?
I'm going to watch what I say from now on.
Hey, no, you're picky. You're a picky eater, too. Very picky.
I'd rather be a picky eater than,
Okay, whatever. Anyways, thank you, Rockio, even though you kind of slided me at the end there. Yeah, that was take it or leave it. Coming up next, what is the Cardinals' plan in center field without Michael Siani in the lineup? We'll discuss that coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
perspective on the day's top stories. It's the Opening Drive's Fresh Take.
Nootbaar in for Siani. Jim Hayes, what's the deal with Siani?
Chip, you were right. Something was going on with Siani. According to the Cardinals, he was removed from the game with right oblique tightness. That's all we have, right oblique tightness for Siani.
Really bad news for the Cardinals and for Michael Siani this past weekend. He is dealing with an oblique strain, and it looks like it's considered to be moderate. So I would estimate, once again, not a doctor here, so don't hold me to this, but about 6 weeks, and that is a huge loss for the Cardinals and for Michael Siani, who has really solidified that role as the Cardinals center fielder, which is just crazy. If you would have told me at the beginning of the year that Michael Siani would be your center fielder, I'd said, what in the world happened with this team? But he has been such a great revelation for this group defensively, but also his bat has been able to really develop offensively at the plate. What he's been able to do, his numbers have been picking up, and this is a huge loss for this team. It really is, because now you have the ripple effect of what does this outfield, who just constantly has injuries, what does it look like moving forward? And the Cardinals called up Victor Scott the second this past weekend, so you now have VS2 up here, and I think it's more about things defensively and what he provides. He can be a late inning, defensive replacement. Also, his base running skills, I'm sure, is another reason why they called him up. But here's the kicker. It's another left-handed bat for your team.
Yeah, I don't like it personally. And I like Victor Scott. And in like a theoretical sense, I like having him on the roster because he can help, as you mentioned, in center field defensively late in a game, or he could be somebody that comes in as a pinch runner. But that's neither of those things are something that this team does very often. Like, if I'm looking at what the Cardinals are missing right now, I want a right-handed bat in the mix. And to me, the guy that fits that role most capably is Thomas Ajayci. Now, the Cardinals will tell you that it's impossible to be able to maneuver the 40-man roster, and so therefore we cannot possibly fit Thomas Ajayci onto that, even though he's been the hottest hitter in AAA for like 6 weeks now. And he's a right-handed bat that can play at second, short, and third base for you. And my guess is if you really needed him to, he could probably go out to the outfield. But they don't want to do that for whatever reason. And so what they're doing is they're going to have Victor Scott up, and you had, once again, a left-handed hitter problem. And so this, to me, Brooke, as I'm looking at the way that the lineup is constructed, like, you tell me what sounds better to you. The lineup that I'm about to tell you, or the one that you now expect to have with Victor Scott when he's out there in center field, which I think is going to happen a decent amount. Mason Wynn, Alec Burleson, Wilson Contreras with Arenado batting cleanup, and then Donovan, Goldie, Nootbaar, Pham, Gorman. Sounds pretty decent. Gorman is my 9-hole hitter potentially as a DH. I've got Donovan as my second base in this one. An outfield of Burleson, Nootbaar, and Pham. Now, defensively, that's not ideal for you in the outfield. Hey, man, you got to overcome it. Right now, this is a team that desperately needs to have some offense in the lineup. That lineup that I just told you could exist with Thomas Ajayci or Jordan Walker or Ivan Herrera potentially on your bench as a right-handed thumper that can come in and potentially pinch hit in a late game situation for one of Nootbaar or Gorman or Burleson if there's a big-time lefty pitcher on the mound. Instead, they're going to go with a guy in Victor Scott who has basically been good for 9 games.
He has, and I want to make sure I give him credit there because he has been, it seems like he's made some adjustments. If you look here lately, and I was reading an article yesterday about it, that he's even fixed his swing, and maybe that's unlocked some of this recent power because he has improved offensively, so you give him credit for that. I know if you look at his overall numbers right now, they're not astounding, but to your point, here recently, he has been able to do well.
But am I really buying into a 9-game sample against 2 teams?
Yeah, well, 3 home runs for him, including a grand slam in July, and he fixed his swing. He worked with Ryan Ludwig, who's down in the minor leagues, and he suggested a more athletic swing that included a leg kick to generate some more momentum. And so maybe the Cardinals are looking at that and saying, okay, he's made some adjustments here, and we want to reward him for that. I think Jordan Walker is another interesting point to this conversation because my first thought is, okay, they're going to call up Jordan Walker. That makes sense because he also has been improving here recently. You're seeing his average, go up some. You're seeing his OPS go up a little bit, and he had a home run last night as well. So I was thinking maybe Jordan Walker, but I think if Jordan Walker comes up here, he has to play consistently. I don't want him on the bench. Yeah, I don't want him on the bench whatsoever. So it comes down to the 40-man and how the Cardinals manage that, which I don't think this is the first instance of where you have some questions about the 40-man and how it's managed by the team.
No, not at all. And so, like, what would you have done in this scenario? If you were the Cardinals, what are you doing? If you Michael Siani going to the injured list, you, Brooke, have the options in front of you, and you've got whether
I would call it Pereira. Honestly, which I think that says a lot about your roster construction, though, if you have 3 catchers up with your team.
I don't mind it. I think that it's become like this thing that people hate.
Where it's taboo.
It's fine.
Like, who cares? Yeah. I think it does say something about your roster construction, but at the same time, I think Ivan Herrera should have been the call, honestly.
I would have been fine with that. I would have been fine with Thomas Sajaci. I would have been fine with Walker. I don't think that there were opportunities for him, honestly. Like, you just look at the way that the outfield's constructed.
He just needs to build in the minors.
Yeah, let him keep going with this, see if what you're seeing right now is real. And then, 2-3 weeks from now, especially as we get closer to the rosters expanding in September, then probably he's one of the guys that ends up getting the call. I would have gone with Sajaci just because of the roster construction that you're talking about there. He adds more flexibility to you offensively and defensively, and he provides the right-handed bat that this team is desperately lacking right now. So that would have been my personal preference. I'll be very interested to see how much Victor Scott plays. That's going to be my big question is, are they going to do the same thing with him that they've done with Matt Carpenter and Brandon Crawford, where he's just on the roster, sits on the bench, and almost never sees a significant opportunity?
And I think that's the answer as to why they called him up. Honestly, I think that's why. It's just because they want him to be a late defensive replacement for this team in the outfield, and they just want him to pinch run every once in a while for his base running. I think that's how they see it.
Such a limited role, and it's so little value to your roster if that's the way you're going about it. Like a big pinch hit. We saw the value of this with Tommy Pham in his first game as a Cardinals. Like, they had been missing that exact situation, that player for that spot all year long. And Tommy Pham comes up and he breaks the game wide open, and it allows you to use your bullpen in a different way. It allows you to have a little bit more breathing room, and it has a trickle-down effect, both with your starter the next day, the bullpen the next day, and everything. Instead, now they have Tommy Pham as an everyday starter once again, which is fine. I got no problems with that. But now you have to replace the role that Tommy Pham just had, and they decided not to do that.
That's Brooke on BK. Coming up next, we're going to head to the celebrity line to talk to the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber, to see what he's been up to this summer. That's going up next here on 101 ESPN.
Hey, how about this review from Michelle for Classic Air Care? John provided exceptional service. I appreciated his knowledge and professionalism. He gave me an honest status of my HVAC unit, as well as educated me on some changes I would like to make. Additionally, he made me aware of some surrounding things to look out for, to be aware of as it relates to my AC unit. It's about the education. It's about the service, and there's over 3,000 reviews on their website at classicaircare.com from people like Michelle talking about the great service that they get. And that is what you get from Classic Air Care. They've got great loyalty programs. They've got great service. They've got great pricing. And they can take care of any problem that you're having as we're in the dead heat of summer, whether it be a sound you don't like, something you're concerned about, or if you do need a whole new unit, they can get it done quickly because they have them in stock. So when you're dealing with the comfort of your home, make sure you're calling the Classic people to take care of it. It's Classic Air Care. Go to classicaircare.com, check out the reviews, and remember, they've been making people comfortable since 1926.
Welcome back to the opening drive. Brooke and BK here, and we head to the celebrity line to talk to the voice of the Blues, radio voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. Kerbs, how are you doing today?
Brooke, I'm awesome. How are you?
I'm doing great. How was your weekend? I saw that you made a pizza on an egg.
I did. I had a great night with some neighbors. First time I had baked some pizza on the old big green egg, so that was actually a fun way to do dinner. So we'll do that one more often, and the good news was didn't burn one. I figured for sure, like I was dead certain when I went into that project that I had an Emo's, near me on speed dial ready to go, but we didn't need it. It worked out well, and St. Louis Home Fire has been a good sponsor on 101 throughout the years too, and Frank Schmer does a great job. So I popped in there, got a couple extra accessories I needed to do it, and boom. Made some pizza. It was a good weekend.
Yeah, it looks great. I didn't see the finished product, though, so I can't fully judge it. But, yes, on the big green egg, it looks like it was a pretty good pizza.
Well, you know what? I forgot to take pictures of the finished product. So, it's like we just brought it right in and ate it. I'm like, oh, snap. Oops, it's gone. So, yeah, that happens. No, it was a great weekend of neighbors. I think a good weekend of sports, too. And it was just a nice, relaxing summer weekend here, which was needed in the Kerber household.
Yeah, it was a great weekend of sports, but we're still missing hockey, Kerbs. How excited are you to finally get things started here soon?
Well, I was sitting at when I went down to get the pizza dough, and I got it from the Missouri Baking Company down there, right? So just a great spot for it if you're not into making your own dough, which I sure as hell was not at that point in time. Every time they rolled out a number, so Christie pulled the number out, and it was 99, and I'm thinking, oh, Gretzky. And then from that point on, I went, uh-oh. And they went back to 0, right? And then it's like 1. I'm like, Glenn Hall, and I'm just sitting in the back of the line. And every time they reeled out a number, okay, who's got number 2? I'm like, Al McInnes. I'm like, holy cow, I missed some hockey right now. So the whole, it became an exercise in trying to figure out if I could pick 2 or 3. It was like, what do they call it, the Immaculate Square, something like that? It was like my own version of that, just trying to come up with as many different Blues players that wore the numbers. So I think mentally I was a little bored.
The immaculate grid, I think, is what you're looking for there, Kerbs.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. Yeah.
Let's do some roster talk, Kerbs, because over at The Athletic, they had an interesting team-building exercise. They were looking into, they specifically used Toronto as the kind of the jumping-off point because they're the poster childs of this type of a build, but they were looking into how much you should pay your core group of players, right, your stars. And they looked at recent Stanley Cup champions, and this included the Blues in 2019, where they said, hey, they've got 2 stars on the team, 2 core players, and they combined for $14 million. And you look most recently, the Florida Panthers. 4 stars, according to this piece. They made up about $37 million worth of their cap this past season. Out of curiosity, Kerbs, what style of build do you think is easier to construct a Stanley Cup champion around? One where it's kind of flat and you've just got a lot of really good players, or one that kind of relies on 2, 3, 4 different stars that are making big-time money?
I think that, like in my opinion, you have a better chance with your first scenario. Now, the challenge is you still need really good players. So, in the sense, like Ryan O'Reilly really was a star that year for the St. Louis Blues, but they had him at a reasonable price. Your best chances of really building something well and winning come to me when you've got guys that are at a reasonable term, kind of in the moving into the prime or just entering the prime before maybe that big contract happens, and you get the most out of them. I'll go the early days of the Blackhawks, run there is a perfect example. Now, the challenge, the biggest difference, though, BK, when it comes to this is salaries are going to go up now more than they have in the last 4 or 5 years, at least as a whole, because the salary cap is no longer flat. COVID and the negotiations between the players and the league had the salary cap flat for those 4 or 5 years. That made it increasingly difficult for a team like Toronto, who had been in the process of signing some of those big guys, the Austin Matthews and the John Tavares and stuff. It made it really hard for them to supplement their roster. Teams like the Florida Panthers, who have just kind of gotten into that realm with the contract of Matthew Tkachuk and a few others now, they're going to be able to supplement their roster better than the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are the poster child for top-end spending, right? They're going to be able to supplement it better because the cap, for example, this year went up $4.5 million, and they anticipate it going up now for the next number of years. So the challenge with that discussion is Toronto's plan might have worked, but COVID and the flat cap really prevented them from making some other improvements. And now I'm curious to see how that will work, because it wasn't until, just a couple of years ago that a team had won a Stanley Cup with a player with a $10 million salary. So I think now the variance in the cap again is going to maybe change that science a bit.
Dalibor Dvorsky, I think, is a player that a lot of people are looking at this camp. Do you think that he has a chance to make the team?
Yeah, you know what, Brooke? I don't know if he has a chance to make the team or not. I didn't see him enough over the course of last year or know what he's doing this summer. I do know that there's opportunity for him to make it. So it's not like he's coming in and saying, hey, he's going to have to push 2 or 3 guys out as a young player just to be given a shot. I also think that when you do a little bit of tarot card reading and tea leaf reading, from the comments made at the end of the season from Doug Armstrong, I get a sense, and again, I'm reading between the lines here, so take that for what it's worth. I get a sense that they're really hoping that he does make it. I think there's opportunity for him. I really do, guys, like the idea of, even as a young player and the growing pains that he's going to go through, I like the idea of him being on the roster this year, if it's even close, because at that point then you're talking about, Jake Neighbors going into year 4, but officially kind of his second full year in the National Hockey League, right? You're talking then maybe about Dvorsky getting his, bill wet here this season. And then at the end of the year or next season with Jimmy Snuggerud, then you're talking about a guy coming in. So you're staggering that learning curve, and I think that's a better recipe for success. So I think there's opportunity for him. I just don't know if he'll have it all put together to make it, but he's going to be given every chance.
Do you think that there's any other player that you will be looking towards to this camp that could maybe kind of have a breakout camp, I guess you could say?
Well, for me, I'm curious on two guys, and I'm gonna hang this defensively. Like I'm not going the young guys from Sweden yet. I am actually and I don't know, kind of exactly where this fits in, but Kaskamaki is a player I'm really intrigued about to see how he looks and how things kind of turn out for him. A very solid two-way player, like most Finnish players that you end up seeing. But on the defensive side, there's two guys that really, to me, change the game for the St. Louis Blues. It's what does Kessel do now and what will be his first full season in the National Hockey League, and does he continue to play like that? And can a Tyler Tucker crack this team? The Blues could use a little bit more of that grit, a little bit more of that size and nastiness, and we've seen him have the ability to show it. It was not consistent enough, and then for whatever reason it disappeared. I'm kind of curious how his camp looks and whether or not he's able to break camp with this team and stick. Remember, he was on the opening night roster a year ago and had a terrific camp, and then it just faded from there. Did he learn from that? And if he did, then the Blues, I think, defensively have some real good options to play around depending on your opponent.
All right. Well, thank you, Kerb, so much for joining us, and we're really looking forward to hockey finally starting here soon.
All right, guys. Have an awesome week.
That was Voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber, talking to us. And coming up next, we have The Fight. And I guess it will be me today, unless you want to do it.
It's all you,
that was very
I've
quick.
already seen the answers.
That was quick. That was really quick, BK. All right, if you want to fight me, then text into the Air Cover Service text line. That is 314-399-9646, 314-399-YO-HO. The Fight is coming up next.
This is Rocky with your Sports Center update, brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. The Cardinals over the weekend dropped 3 out of 4 to the Chicago Cubs. They now sit 3.5 games back behind the Brewers and 3 games back from the third wild card spot. They'll be back in action today with a makeup from May facing off against the Mets. It'll be the Mets sending the lefty Sean Manaea to the mound to face off against the Cardinals' Andre Palante. Also over the weekend, St. Louis City back in action for another group stage match in the Leagues Cup. It was a 1-1 draw through regulation, and then City falls to FC Juarez in penalty kicks. They will still move on to the round of 32, where they will face off against the Portland Timbers on Friday evening at City Park. Game time still undetermined. That is your Sports Center update, brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Welcome to the fight. In the red corner, Average Joe Listener. And in the blue corner, the undisputed king of morning drive. Please welcome Randy Carricker.
All right, but welcome back into the opening drive. It is time for the fight. I'm Brandon Kiley. That is Matt Rocchio. We have Brooke, who will be participating in the fight today, pinch hitting for Randy. And today she's going up against Curtis. Curtis, welcome into the show. How you doing this morning, my man?
I'm doing pretty well. How about you guys?
We're doing fantastic. How are you feeling in terms of your excitement level, your anticipation level, and your confidence heading into today's fight?
Pretty good. Yeah, feel pretty good.
All right. I could feel the excitement, Curtis. Let's get into this thing. Question number 1. Following 15 seasons with the New York Knicks, Patrick Ewing went on a ring-chasing event in his final 2 years of the NBA. Which was the last team in the NBA that Patrick Ewing suited up for? Is it A, the Magic, B, the Rockets, or C, the Sonics?
Ooh. Not a huge NBA. I'm going to go Sonics, though.
Say that again. What was your correct? What was your answer?
Sonics.
The Sonics? Okay.
All right, number 2. Who holds the record for the most individual seasons with 3,000-plus passing yards in NFL history? Is that Drew Brees, Brett Favre, or Tom Brady?
Let's go Drew Brees.
Question number 3. There's only one NFL team that has been able to repeat as Super Bowl champions in 2 different stretches. Who did it? Was it A, the 49ers, B, the Dallas Cowboys, or C, the Pittsburgh Steelers? One NFL team that repeated as Super Bowl champions in 2 different stretches. So they had back-to-back titles multiple times.
Right.
Separated from the previous time.
Correct.
Yeah. I think that was the Steelers. We'll go Steelers.
All right, and the 2 teams with the highest regular season win total in Major League Baseball both lost in the playoffs. Which franchise owns the record for regular season wins while also going on to win the World Series with 114? Is it the Yankees, the Cubs, or the Dodgers?
Of course, it'd be those options. Let's just go Yankees.
All right. Double check the score and bring in Brooke Grimsley.
All right, Curtis, you have now gone through your 4 questions for today. How are you feeling?
Worse than when you asked me.
Are you a football, baseball, hockey, or basketball guy?
Hockey.
Hockey guy?
Hockey.
Yep.
You say hockey?
Yep, of course.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yep. That's how it goes, right? Whatever your sport is, it always ends up being the opposite. Brooke, you've got Curtis on the line going up against you in the fight today.
Hey, Curtis, how are you doing?
Doing all right. Good luck, Brooke.
Thank you. How are you feeling after the fight?
Amazing. Very, very good.
Oh, okay. All right.
There you go. I respect that, Curtis. All right, Brooke, let's get into question number 1. Following 15 seasons with the New York Knicks, Patrick Ewing went on a ring-chasing tour in his final 2 seasons in the NBA. What was the final team that he suited up for in his NBA career? Are you going with the choices today?
I do 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's 2
Unless we wanted to add more.
No, you can go. You don't have to go.
I didn't want to go through them immediately to ruin one of those for you.
You don't have to go modified Randy, Brooke. You're making it harder on yourself on purpose.
To restate, Patrick Ewing, final NBA team that he suited up for was who?
Okay. I have somewhat an idea, but can you give me options on this one? So
A, the Magic, B, the Rockets, or C, the Sonics?
Well, he definitely played for the Magic and Sonics. I don't think he played for the Rockets, but he has. I'm going with Magic.
All right, Brooke. Who holds the record?
You said last team, right?
Correct. The final team that he suited up for.
Who holds the record for the most individual seasons with 3,000 plus passing yards in NFL history?
Ooh. I feel like it might be. I feel like Brady's always like a good choice for that.
What makes you say that?
Because he's really good.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Played 100 years in the NBA.
I like to block those. I like to block those facts out of my brain.
Is that your final answer?
That's on me.
Unless you're getting tricky here.
Me? Tricky?
Because there's some other ones that are up there. I'll go with Tom Brady. I feel like that's a safe bet.
All right.
Call me tricky.
Question number 3. There's only one team in the NFL that has repeated as Super Bowl champions in 2 different stretches. So they went back-to-back at one point, and then they went back-to-back at some other point in their history. Okay. Who did it? Who was the NFL team that repeated as Super Bowl champions multiple different times in their history?
Multiple different times. Okay. I'll take the options on this one.
A, the 49ers, B, the Cowboys, or C, the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Ooh. Steelers. Give me Steelers.
Right. The 2 teams with the highest regular season win total in Major League Baseball history both lost in the playoffs. Which franchise owns the record for regular season wins while also going on to win the World Series with 114?
The 114?
Regular season wins before going on to win the World Series.
This can't have been recently.
Define recent.
Like,
no hints.
Oh, sorry, but I just asked her to define recent.
No hints.
Ugh, I cannot think of this.
She always gets me on the table talk.
I know.
I slip up.
I try. It's the old journalist in me where I'm trying to like pull out little tidbits of information.
Nothing
here.
more. Just answer.
I don't know. I'll just go Dodgers in this situation since I can't. I guess I could have. I should have just gone with all of the options and not do Randy's style.
Modified Randy. Make you seem like a badass.
For what it's worth, they were one of the options.
They were one of the options. It was a good guess.
Oh, okay. So I at least got that.
So you would have ended up in the same answer, most likely.
But then it also tells me I didn't get that right, probably, the way that you framed that.
See, I mean, we have a winner. It's finalized, and now we're going to do the whole announcement thing. And so the question is, did Curtis come in here on a Monday and knock off the Grim Reaper? Or does the scythe come down once again? Ring that bell.
The winner and still champion of the fight, Randy Carricker.
The fight is presented by Golf Discount of St. Louis, with the most experienced club fitters in town. Why shop anywhere else?
Just win, baby. Brooke Grimsley wins this one 3-2. I'm sorry, Curtis, you couldn't avoid the Grim Reaper on this one.
Yeah, I think that Tom Brady question got me. That's what I was doing there.
Yeah, that'll trip you up. Let's go through the questions and answers. Following 15 seasons with the Knicks, Patrick Ewing went on a little ring chasing in his final 2 years in the NBA. He first went to the Seattle Supersonics, and then he finished it off with the Orlando Magic, and he did not get that ring, unfortunately. Who holds the record for the most individual seasons with 3,000 plus passing yards? To BK's point, it seemed like he played like 100 years in the NFL. It seemed like while the first like 5 years, though, you're like, he didn't pass 3,000 yards. He didn't all those, but Tom Brady did in fact get 20 seasons of 3,000 yard passing passing.
is.
What's more insane than that is Brett Favre got 18 and Drew Brees got 16.
In a different era.
Nuts. Yeah, exactly. With Favre, too. There was only one
I had
NFL
a feeling that
team.
Favre had to have been up there.
He's definitely up there. Only one NFL team to repeat as Super Bowl champions in 2 different stretches. It is, in fact, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They won Super Bowl 9 and 10. They waited a couple years before they would then go on and win Super Bowl 13 and 14. I guess the Chiefs are going to have a chance to join that, or would it be 3 in a row?
Potentially.
Am I off the... I keep forgetting the years. Okay, 3 in a row.
But they'll do it later on. Don't worry.
Wow.
They'll join this list, just not this year.
Every once in a while, I'm reminded that you're a Chiefs fan.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
The 2 teams with the highest regular season win total in Major League Baseball history both lost in the playoffs. That is, of course, the Mariners and the 1906 Cubs with 116. The 1998 New York Yankees are the team who did it. They won 114 in the regular season, and they still went on to win the World Series. So that is the highest regular season win total while going on to win the World Series, 114 from the recent 1998 Yankees. So a 3-2 win for Brooke Grimsley. There you go.
There you go.
Isn't that 1902 in baseball?
That's cool.
Or 1964? I always forget which one is which. That's modern. That's the live ball area. 64 is like the modern era. Anyway,
everybody has different definitions of recent, huh?
The modern era.
That's why I asked. 3-2 win for Brooke today in the fight. Curtis, thank you again for joining the fight and joining the show today.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Curtis. And you didn't put any hockey questions in there for him. It's like you know beforehand.
It's almost like I'm not thinking a lot about hockey.
Yeah.
Well, that is the fight. Coming up next, do the Cardinals, have they lost faith in Nolan Gorman? It sure seems like that. We'll discuss that coming up here on the opening drive. Morning Drive, Brooke and BK in for Randy Kerber. And look, we have to talk about Nolan Gorman here because Nolan Gorman was not in the lineup again on Sunday, and he's been dropped in the order, if not left out of the lineup completely against right-handers, and his lineup appearances against southpaws are almost becoming non-existent. What do the Cardinals do about Nolan Gorman moving forward? Because, I mean, the strikeouts are just really continuing to mount up for him. 140 strikeouts on the season, I believe, for Nolan Gorman right now. What can you do? Does he have options? Do you send him down, or you just let him work out all this situation up here in the majors?
I'm curious what you would do, Brooke. Like, if you're in Ollie's spot and you're putting together the lineup on a day-to-day basis, are you putting Nolan Gorman in it? Like, what are you doing with Gorman right now?
Well, with his numbers and how many times that he strikes out, I can kind of understand why you don't put him in the lineup that often. But he's fine defensively. I think it's just offensively, the amount that he strikes out is just absolutely shocking. And it's kind of hard to look past that.
I think you just kind of got to live with it. Because if you're not going to, then you need to trade him in the offseason. It's frustrating as hell to watch. I'm not telling anybody what they don't know. He's striking out 38% of the time on the season. That's an abomination. Like, that cannot be the way that he operates, because he's going to have to hit like 300 basically to be able to make up for that.
Yeah.
And that's never going to be what Nolan Gorman is. And that's okay, because he's going to be a power hitter. But this season, he's striking out too much to be able to make up for it. This is who he is, guys. And he's going to go through some serious slumps, and you live with that to get the upside of what he is when he's going through a heater. And you hope when you get to the end of the season, he's on that heater and he helps become the player that can get you through October. I don't think it's been as bad recently necessarily as what his playing time would indicate, though. And I'm curious if this is happening because they've gone through a stretch where they've seen a lot of left-handed starters, or if this is just the way that they're going to operate. And I think Friday, Brooke, to me, gave you a pretty strong indication that this is what they're going to do. When he did not come in to pinch hit for Michael Siani against a right-handed reliever, that told me everything I need to know about how they currently view Nolan Gorman. So for me, I'd be writing him in the lineup more often, even with the frustrations of what he's become as a strikeout artist, because I want that upside of the power. But for them, with the way that they're utilizing him right now, if that's the way that Ollie's going to use him, you've got to at least consider sending him down. You've got to consider, can we better utilize this spot on our roster? Would it be better for us to have a Thomas DeJacy or Ivan Herrera in that role that is currently being occupied, technically, by Nolan Gorman? So it's not an easy situation to be in if you're Mo, in my opinion. And I think that one is harder than what Ollie's doing right now, personally.
I think with Nolan Gorman, you have to figure out something with him because it's just not currently working right now. And to your point, they're not even utilizing him that much. You're seeing Brendan Donovan pick up some more time at second, so they're really not using him in any way, and it just kind of seems like a waste at this point. And I think going into this season, if you looked at this lineup, if you're looking at getting power from this team, you're hoping to see that return power with Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt, and that Nolan Gorman can kind of continue to develop into more of that power hitter that they're looking for.
Yeah, he's the one guy that has the potential to be like a 35-plus home run hitter on this roster.
Yeah.
And so, to me, I think you have to live with the good and the bad with Nolan Gorman. And if you're not going to, then, like, what was the whole point of any of this? Like, if you're unwilling to live with the ups and downs that you knew existed. This is not a surprise that Nolan Gorman strikes out a lot. He strikes out 32% for his major league career. He did this down in the minors. He also walks a fair bit, and he's going to run into, if he plays every single day, 30 home runs by the end of the season. He had 27 of them a year ago. So I guess that's where I'm a little bit confused is, what about this surprises them? What about this leads to him just completely losing his job? I would still be writing him into the lineup, and it's why I disagreed with the decision to bring up Victor Scott. Because if you're going to be playing Victor Scott every day in center field, it has a trickle-down effect of, okay, who am I pulling out of the lineup? And it essentially becomes a one-for-one replacement of Victor Scott for Nolan Gorman. Because now you're bouncing down Brendan Donovan to second base. He's going to be starting there. and it puts Victor Scott in the outfield with Tommy Pham and Lars Nootbaar, and then you have Alec Burleson as your designated hitter. There is no spot remaining in that scenario for Nolan Gorman. So, and that's against right-handed pitching, which is where you would want to utilize Nolan Gorman most likely. I don't see a spot for him in the lineup right now, and it's incredibly frustrating for that to be the case.
I think in this situation, since you already have Victor Scott here, why not send Nolan Gorman down, let him work through some things, and then bring up Ivan Herrera? What would you think about that situation?
I'd be fine with it, but I don't think Gorman has anything to learn at AAA. I don't think he's going to go down there and become a different player by seeing AAA pitching. Well, how many times have we heard this, whether it's with the Jackson Holiday situation or guys that are coming up for the Cardinals, where they say the gap has never been wider between AAA and the major leagues. So Gorman probably, in your scenario, goes down, adjusts a couple of different things, puts up some big-time numbers. And what does it really mean? Like, they very clearly don't trust the numbers for Luke Baker, who's raking down in AAA.
Yeah.
They don't appear to trust the numbers for, I forget what his name is, Kopernik, one of the other outfielders that's down there right now. He's at like Koperniak. He's at like 315 on the season with some real power. So what would it do for them? Like, would they actually change their view of Gorman by him going down and hitting against AAA pitching? My guess is no. I don't know that it actually accomplishes much to do that right now.
No. And then you have Jordan Walker in the minors, who's starting to pick up a little bit. Do you see him just staying in the minors for the rest of the season? Because I think at this point, that's what's going to happen. You have the injury with Michael Siani in the outfield. I thought that maybe that was an opportunity to bring Walker up, but you wouldn't be able to utilize him as much. I think Walker needs to be here consistently, and where he's not going back down, and where he's getting consistent at bats and playing time.
Yeah, I agree. If you're going to call up Jordan Walker, he's got to be playing every single day. He's finally starting to have some production down there. I know I just said for Gorman, like, it doesn't really change much for him. That's because this is his third year in the big leagues. Like, Jordan Walker had some success last season, came up, struggled this year. Time to send him back down. I agreed with their decision to do so, and then he never produced. And over the last 10 days or so, it's finally starting to come together. And I would not have called him up the same reason that I would not have called up Victor Scott. It's a 10-day stretch. I want to see more of that. Like, show me that you can produce for a month. And once you get there, rosters expand in September. If he's still producing then the way that he is right now, I would be calling up Jordan Walker as that 28th guy. And then let's see what he can do down the stretch for you. Maybe he becomes that right-handed bat that the team is lacking. But right now, I would not do that. I would have gone to JC personally. Ivan Herrera would have been my second choice.
Quick question from the text line, because AAA doesn't hurt your playoff chances. Gorman can work on his eye and pitch selection, so he can just work on stuff with no pressure. Do you think that it's a confidence issue right now? Well, of course, we're not in his head with Nolan Gorman, but do you think that that could benefit him in that way?
I mean, it's hard to say without knowing for sure, but he looks to me like the hitter that he's been his entire career, which is a guy that goes up there, and there are times when the high fastball is a problem. There are a lot of times when the slider away is a problem for him. He chases too often. He strikes out a lot. He swings and misses, and that's who he is. So I don't think that changes by going down to AAA. I think what he needs to see is a major league slider, a major league fastball where guys have pinpoint command. And one of the things that's almost been legislated out of AAA is that high fastball, because they have the automated strike zone. And from all of the pitchers that have gone down to AAA and pitched there, they say that is the one pitch that's really gone away. You can't get that high strike as much as you can once you're in the major leagues. So Gorman may make the necessary adjustments to everything except for the high fastball, which is one of the things that he's been struggling the most with here at the major league level. So does he actually make the necessary fixes that will help him here, or just adjust to the stuff that helps him down there? That would be my concern about it.
I think it all goes back to the previous question that we had. If this team goes on any sort of stretch to hopefully make it to the playoffs, because that has to be a part of the conversation now of hopefully making it to the playoffs, because right now they're on the outside looking in. You need Nolan Gorman to produce a little bit more at the plate, more than he has, and you need Paul Goldschmidt and you need Nolan Arenado to do the same as well. It comes down to those three players, but I'm still looking at Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt to do better than they have, and I know that Goldie has looked a little bit better as of late, but still,
weekend for him, but
yes, a better weekend. But yes, you still need more from those three guys to say, yes, I feel confident about this team winning 30 of the next 50, which is that scenario that we were talking about earlier.
That's the thing. Like, Gorman is one of those guys that if you're going to win 30 of your next 50 games, he could be a catalyst for it.
Exactly.
I mean, he could go on a stretch where he's, I mean, it's not crazy to say, hits 10 home runs in the next 30 games. And you're like, oh, wow, that was why we won 7 of those games in that stretch. And that's the kind of thing that he can do in a playoff series for you. He has some of that Kyle Schwarber effect, where it is, hey, he's not going to get on for a lot of average, and he's going to strike out way more often than what you'd like. But when he hits the ball, when he connects, it goes really far, and it puts runs on the board. So I would continue having him in the lineup on a regular basis. I gave my lineup earlier today. I would like to see them go with something that includes Wynn, Burleson, Contreras, Arenado, Donovan, Goldie, Nootbaar, Pham, and Gorman. Yes, that lacks defensively in the outfield, and I don't love Lars Nootbaar as a center fielder, but I don't love any of their options right now in center field. And the best of the bad options, in my opinion, is Nootbaar in center, Gorman as my designated hitter or second baseman, however you'd prefer to operate that with Brendan Donovan. And I've got a lefty-righty split in my lineup there. That's the way that I would have preferred to go about it. And then I've got either Thomas DeJC or Ivan Herrera on my bench, where I've got a right-handed hitter that can come in a big situation if I need it against a left-handed pitcher late. So that's what I would have preferred. They decided to go about it in a very different way.
I'd feel a lot better about that bench, BK. Yeah. I would. All right, that's BK. I'm Brooke. Coming up next, the Cardinals falling to the Cubs this weekend. The Cubs taking 3 out of 4. Did that change your perspective on the Cardinals' playoff chances? We'll discuss that coming up next here on The Opening Drive. Hey everyone, it's Brooke here, and this year we decided it was time to make a major upgrade to our home by updating our bathroom. We have this house in U City. It's over 100 years old and we love it, but we never exactly loved our main bathroom. But this is really the first time we've ever done anything like this in our house before, a major project. So we decided to reach out to one of our great sponsors here of 101 ESPN, and that is E&B Granite. E&B Granite's team visited our house for a free consultation, and they came up with a vision of how to really transform our bathroom. My favorite part of working with E&B Granite was stopping by their showroom to explore their large selection of in-stock custom countertops, all of their cabinet options. Of course, I loved picking out the new colors for our bathroom. Jen was the one who was working with us, and she has been fantastic. She came up with so many great ideas for us that really fit within our budget. And that's what they do there at E&B Granite. They've been turning visions into realities for over 20 years. So schedule your free consultation by calling 314-645-9300 or go online at embgranite.com or stop by their showroom today and make sure you mention that I sent you.
Recapping the biggest sports stories of the day on the opening drive with a Rush Hour Reset.
Welcome back to the opening drive, and we have a chance. 101 ESPN has a chance for you to win a pair of lawn tickets to see Green Day.
Hell yeah.
Ooh, I love Green Day. What, did you like Green Day back in the day?
Yeah, but that was my middle school. That was my middle school anthem.
Were you
for me.
emo?
I wasn't emo, but I liked a lot of the emo music. So like Taking Back Sunday, Green Day, My Chemical Romance. That was like my lane from like 6th to 9th-ish grade. So
yeah. All right. If you want to win a pair of lawn tickets to see Green Day with special guests, Rancid, I believe, next Thursday, August 15th at Hollywood Casino Amphitheater. Text in to win free tickets to Green Day now at 314-399-9646. That's 314-399-YO-HO. A limited amount of tickets remain for the show. Find all the ticket details at 101ESPN.com and a bonus chance to register to win tickets to Green Day. BK, sorry you can't apply to this because you can, but everybody wants to go to that. All right, the Cardinals, the series this past weekend, I've been trying to find a way to frame this nicely, but there really isn't a way, BK, because the Cubs took 3 out of 4, and also they really could have swept this series. And I think it's fair to say, after a trade deadline where the Cardinals did make some additions, you added Tommy Pham, you added Eric Fetty in a way that I thought that they weren't going to be able to pull off because there were some restrictions behind the scene of what Mozeliak could do, and he was still able to figure it out. And you added Sean Armstrong, and you moved Dylan Carlson. I was expecting more in this series against the Cubs, and the Cardinals really just fell flat, especially offensively. We talked about their issues with runners in scoring position, 3 of 25, I believe, in the entire series against the Cubs. Did it change your perspective on the Cardinals' playoff chances?
So I think the biggest thing from this weekend, like if you learned one thing over the weekend or you saw one statistic, it was 3 for 25 with runners in scoring position. I don't expect that to be the case long term. Now, I could absolutely be proven wrong. Maybe this team hits below 100 with runners in scoring position for the rest of the season. Suppose it's possible. I don't expect that, though. And so there will be some regression in a positive way for the Cardinals the rest of the way in that regard. But it did show some of the pitfalls with this roster, especially offensively. And when you get into a spot like on Friday night, I thought that to me was the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you look back at the weekend, the one that got away from you was Friday night because you had a real opportunity to be, well, really Thursday and Friday, because there was the Helsley blow up. And then Friday, you have the situation where Ollie Marmol decides to pinch hit Brandon Crawford in the 8th inning, down 5-3 with the bases loaded and 2 outs against Hector Neris. And he decided to do so because back in 2019, Brandon Crawford had good numbers against Hector Neris. That was the stated reason that he gave for that. So you're playing essentially with like a 24-man roster right now, because apparently he didn't even consider Nolan Gorman in that spot. And to me, like that's the lesson to be learned from this weekend. Your offense didn't give you enough. They didn't come through in the big situations. And until that changes, this is not a team that's going to be a factor in the wild card race. We were talking about this a little bit off air. To me, the out, quote unquote, for the Cardinals is the division.
It is.
Like you are essentially the same team as the Brewers this year when you're not playing head to head, and you're 1-5 this year against the Brewers. And so it's going to be determined by who ends up doing the most damage against the other team head to head the rest of the way.
And Rob on the text line, he pointed out this is the first time that we've seen this team struggle with runners in scoring position. That's kind of been the story of this team all season long, where you have seen that. And you had a great series against the Rangers where you saw some of the power show up, you saw things show up offensively, but then to drop off like that and go back to what we've seen at times during the season with the Cardinals, where you really struggle with runners in scoring position, I wonder, where is kind of the clutch part of this team? Where is the clutch gene? We've heard Tommy Pham talk about this over the weekend. The clutch gene, where is it with this team currently right now?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't exist. They have not done a good job with runners in scoring position for the majority of the season. That was a bit of an issue for them as well last year. And if you look at the guys that are the best at it so far this season, it's Alec Burleson, it's Mason Wynn, it's Brendan Donovan, and the names that I didn't mention there were Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt. And it feels like the game consistently finds those guys, and when it does, they haven't responded particularly well this season. They're not hitting well with runners in scoring position. On the year, Nolan Gorman is not hitting very well with runners in scoring position either. So until they get that figured out, this is a team that's going to consistently go through these significant slumps. And that's where they're at.
From the 3 and 4, I would have thought that they would have more enthusiasm knowing the team made a couple moves during the playoffs, make moves during a playoff run. But I like it was said they fell flat, just more mediocre play, and they have a tough schedule coming up. And I think that's important to note here because these next few games are really important. You're facing the Mets, and then you have kind of a gauntlet of a schedule where you're facing the Padres, which their bullpen looks absolutely insane right now. They made a lot of competitive moves. They did give up a lot of top prospects in the process of doing that, but they made a lot of moves to really improve this team. And you're facing the Dodgers, and you're facing the Twins, and there might be a team I'm missing there, but still, they have a very tough schedule coming up after these next 9 games.
They do, but I don't really care about. I don't like playing the schedule game with this team. Like, they do have a top 5 most difficult schedule the rest of the way, according to the numbers. The reason why I don't like playing the schedule game with the Cardinals is because they'll lose to the Rockies, they'll lose to the White Sox, and then suddenly they'll take 2 out of 3 against the Atlanta Braves, or they'll take 2 out of 3 against a Texas Rangers team that at the time had been heating up in a meaningful way, and it's why they decided not to sell at the deadline. They'll go up against the Pirates and win the game against Paul Skeens and lose the other 2 games in the series. Like, it's hard for me to play the schedule game with the Cardinals because they seem to play up and down at times to whatever the talent is on their schedule. So it just comes down to them. Like, if they don't play better, if they don't figure out some of these things that are plaguing them, it's not going to matter if they're playing the Reds or the Brewers or the Dodgers or the Padres. Like, whoever it is that's on their schedule, they can give them troubles.
Yeah, it really seems that they either play up or down to their competition, depending on that. And that's what's so just kind of strange to this team, because we saw that at times with the Blues. Obviously, 2 very different sports, but doesn't that kind of remind you of the Blues this past season, about how all of a sudden they would have a fantastic game or a fantastic couple of games? You're like, all right, I can buy back into this. And then they would just absolutely fall flat to a team like Columbus, of all teams.
Yeah, that is where the similarities do exist. I think this team's better than what the Blues were. Like, I just think they're, relative to their respective sports or their respective leagues, I think the Cardinals are a more talented and more refined version of themselves. I think the Blues are kind of patching things together and hoping that by the end of the year they were still in contention. I think the stated goal for the Cardinals was to be in contention, so I think there are some differences there. But yes, in terms of the playing up and down, they absolutely have some similarities.
I want to get a question here from the text line, because one of the threads for today has been questioning the Cardinals' decision-making overall, especially the non-player decision-making, the front office and the coach. Why put Goldie and Arenado back in the 3 and 4 positions when they were starting to hit lower in the order? I didn't think that was an interesting move.
So, I don't know. This is something that I've always struggled with. I don't think that the place in your order matters for whether or not a guy's going to be hitting. I don't think
beyond
it's a big deal.
The very small examples of protecting a guy to get certain pitches in very simple 3, 4, 6, 7, whatever have you matchups, right?
Yeah, I think ultimately the problem is try to rattle a lineup for this team, and once you get to the cleanup spot, let me know who you get to.
That's fair.
Tell me who you're putting into the cleanup, because I think 1, 2, 3 is really easy. It's Wynn, Burleson, Contreras. Then who you going with? And I think that's where it gets really difficult. Is it's easier said than done to go with somebody other than those guys there. You're probably going to want a left-handed bat, but are you putting Donovan batting cleanup? Are you putting Nootbaar batting cleanup? Are you going with Nolan Gorman as a cleanup hitter? It's hard. So I get where they're coming from. I don't know that they have great options right now, and that's the problem.
That is the problem, because they don't have many other options at this point. Also, somebody pointed out that this series showed them that they don't have any grit. That was one of the reasons why they brought in Tommy Pham. I know that there's other reasons. You don't think they brought in Tommy Pham for grit reasons?
No, I think there's some truth to that, but the win on Saturday showed a lot of grit. I think that in the last week we've seen this. I think one of the identities of the roster this season is that they've played with a lot of fight. They've played with a lot of grit. So that is one. The only thing that I didn't think that you saw over the weekend was a lack of grit, personally.
And we're going to talk about that coming up next, because what is the identity of this team? BK, you brought this up earlier, and we were kind of struggling to figure out what is the identity of this group, because you need that in order to make the playoffs. We'll discuss that coming up next here on the Opening Drive. Hey everyone, it's Brooke here. Is credit card debt creating a lot of stress in your life? Well, you should go call my friends over at Golden Oak Lending. They can help with Smart Cash, which is low interest money. Let me tell you about a story that they shared with me recently. Amy just had her fourth child and they needed to finish the basement in their house for extra room, of course. So she and her husband put most of it on their credit card, about $20,000. But they were still paying double-digit credit card interest. They did their best paying $900 every single month, but it was just really overwhelming. Her dad suggested that she call Golden Oak Lending to see if her home had increased in value. That way, she could use the extra equity to pay off credit cards. Sure enough, even though they had refinanced before, their home had increased in value. Golden Oak got them their $20,000 in cash. She paid off their credit cards, and Amy is thrilled to not have that monthly payment just hanging over their head. Many people like Amy don't realize how easy it is to use their home's equity to get Smart Cash. If you need cash, go call my friends over at Golden Oak Lending. It's easy. They do all the work for you, and it won't cost you a penny out of pocket. Give them a call today at 314-567-GOLD now to get started, or go to goldenoaklending.com and see all of the reviews for yourself. Drive. And BK, you asked this question earlier, and I think it's a very important question because I've been trying to figure out this exact question this entire season. What is the identity of the Cardinals? Every single team, I believe, has an identity. I think it's very important to have it, obviously, because you need to have that one thing that sets you apart from other teams, especially when we're talking about getting into the playoffs. What is the identity of the Cardinals?
I don't know. I wish I had a better answer for you, but I'm not sure that they totally know. I think they did have a defensive identity. I think they were we're going to play defense up the middle, and once you get to the sixth inning, game's locked down. You can't beat our bullpen. That's our identity of the roster. I don't know that that can exist when you no longer have Michael Siani on the field, though, because he was the second best defender on your team behind only Mason Wynn, in my opinion. And you could make an argument that Siani was number one on the team defensively if you really wanted to. And now that he's going to be out for at least the next 6 weeks, potentially, I don't think you could really hearken on that anymore as like the number one thing that they will rely on. And so now you look at it and you're like, okay, well, it's definitely not the offense because I can't figure out who their cleanup hitter is or should be. It's probably not the rotation because while it's fine, I look at a bunch of the other contenders around the National League, whether that be the Phillies or the Mets or the Padres or the Diamondbacks even when healthy. I think all of their rotations are better than yours. It's probably not the bullpen because I think you could make the same case for some of these other teams that are around you. And I think we've seen that the Cardinals bullpen has some cracks in it. They're bottom five in in Major League Baseball now in strikeout rate as well. So I don't really have a great answer for you as to what the identity of this team is. What it was supposed to be is the offense. It was supposed to be a team that wins with a bunch of young bats that are emerging while these older bats are like hanging on to the back end of their primes. But that hasn't emerged, and so right now you're just a team that's kind of average at everything without any one great thing to be able to point to.
It felt like we were getting like a passing of the torch, and also grit was something that we discussed in the last segment, and to your point, you brought this up, the fact that they were able to climb their way back from starting out things 15 and 24, which was absolutely terrible, of course, and they found a way to claw their way back. But if you're looking at the identity of what was going on then, the bullpen, Ryan Helsley, a big part of that, and the younger players carrying the torch offensively from Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt, some of the older guys. You had Alec Burleson, you had a Mason Wynn, you had the younger guys really stepping up, Brendan Donovan, that were stepping up and kind of taking full advantage of their opportunities and carrying this team offensively and helping them climb back out of that. So from the 5-7-3, veteran leadership is the number one thing. Is that the identity of this group?
I think the identity of the group was the defense. And I think it was the back end of the bullpen. And I think sometimes the idea of like the identity kind of throw some people off in terms of what I'm saying here. Basically, those are the two things the Cardinals did as well as just about anybody in baseball. So if you want to call that the identity or the two biggest strengths on the roster, you can call it that as well. And right now, my concern for the Cardinals is that, as Tommy Pham said over the weekend, they need to win 30 of their last 50 games, basically, to be able to get into the postseason. And to do that, typically you need one thing that you do at an elite level. And right now, I can't really point to any one thing that the Cardinals do or can do at an elite level. And some of this goes down to, like, Alec Burleson has really cooled down over the last 2 weeks. Over the last 2 weeks, he's batting 150 with a slugging percentage of 200. Brendan Donovan's batting 185 in that stretch. Lars Nootbaar is batting 205. Wilson Contreras, even, by the way, is batting 185. Mason Wynn batting 225. All of those guys have been below league average offensively, albeit in a relatively small sample size, over the last 2 weeks of baseball. They can't win that way. This is not a team that can overcome a bad offense. They have to have an offense that overcomes mediocre pitching most of the time. So if that's not going to be the case, I'll ask you the same question, Brooke. What can be that one thing for them in their next 50 games that gets them over the top?
They need Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt to be better than what they have been offensively. I think that's the thing. I think in the second half, when we discussed this before, in the second half of the season, I said if they're making the playoffs, it's because Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt do better offensively and on a consistent basis. I think you can even throw Nolan Gorman in there, but Nolan Gorman is not making the kind of money that Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt are. But you still need Nolan Gorman to produce more at a consistent level. If those three can do that more consistently, then I wouldn't have any question that they would make the playoffs.
Don't we have to kind of write that off, though? Like we're more than 100 games into the season. If they haven't become those players now, I don't know that we can reasonably expect them to be, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And they should, though, is the thing. And that's the thing that I'm just trying to get past is the fact that you need them to be more. And we've been waiting and waiting and waiting, and it still hasn't happened yet.
I mean, with 112 games into the year, I'm not waiting for it anymore.
Like that at bat by Nolan Arenado yesterday. That was one of the more frustrating moments in that situation. And then his demeanor afterwards. I know that we've talked about that before, but it's kind of shocking to see that with Arenado.
If you asked Mo or Ollie, what is the blueprint for you guys to win a playoff series if you make the playoffs, would their answer not include Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt hitting throughout that series?
I mean, are they giving me their honest answer, or are they giving me what they would tell me on the record? I'm saying
if they actually, from their mind, said we can make the playoffs and we can win a series, that's why we went out and made the moves we did instead of selling, what is their realistic form of how they win a playoff series?
I think they would say the offense. Like, I think that would be a big part of it. Like, how much of that is built into the Goldie Arenado aspect of it? If you had them be honest with you, I don't know that it's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
Like, we're 112 games into the season. Yeah. And at a certain point in time, that's a big enough sample. And a lot of this goes back to like midway through last season as well. Goldie, starting in July of last year, was not the same guy. And Nolan Arenado hasn't hit for power in a really long time. So I can't expect that to just suddenly click into place for those guys. So for them, like if they told you, how do we win? We win with back end of the bullpen looking like it did early in the season. Yep. We win with really good defense, and we win with an offense that is carried by the left-handed bats that have shown an ability this season to be really good for us against right-handed pitching, and hopefully we don't run into a bunch of lefties in the postseason. Like, that's probably the formula.
And it all comes down to you leading games after the sixth because you're going to face a bunch of left-handed relievers on the back end of games, which is why if you break down how they bat, how their averages relative to each inning, they're the worst. They're worse in the eighth and ninth innings because usually they end up getting the worst splits in those games.
So at this point, no identity that we've discovered so far. I think it's safe to say.
And what they want to call it, like we're getting some pushback on the idea of like an identity as being the word. They don't have any one thing that they can point to and say, we're elite at this. We're great at this. Whereas the Padres can point to the back end of their bullpen and say, this is the thing that we do better than you. The Diamondbacks can point to their offense and say, we are going to bludgeon you to death. The Dodgers have a top four in their lineup that is unmatched maybe in the history of baseball. The Phillies have just look at the team, literally anything, and point to it and say they're better at that than you. And I don't know what that is for the Cardinals right now. I don't have anything.
Yeah, from the 314, does Brooke actually think that Goldie and Arenado will turn it around? As BK said, it's been 112 games. They are what they are. I agree with you. I did not disagree with you. What I'm saying, though, is that is the one thing. If we're talking about they're able to make the playoffs, they're able to turn things around, it's those two performing better than what we have seen. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I don't. I think it's just over for him.
You think it's done? Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've seen enough of a sample size now that I don't think Goldie should be back next year, and I don't think Arenado's just going to return to his power form. I would love to see it. I would love to be proven incorrect on both of the statements that I just made. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'd be really surprised at this point if they're going to be significantly above league average offensively, because they haven't been that in more than a calendar year.
And that's what I'm saying. It's just that I think this team was built basically with the expectations that they would do more than what they've done this year.
Of course.
100%. Because I didn't think I knew that they were declining last year, and I think that's safe to say, especially towards the second half of the season last year. You saw the numbers really trail off for them offensively. I was hoping that it wouldn't carry into the season, but It has for sure. All right, that's BK. I'm Brooke. Coming up next, we're going to head to the celebrity line to talk to Chip Caray. That's coming up next here on 101 ESPN. Hey everyone, it's Brooke here, and I want to tell you why I love the Missouri Athletic Club. It's because it really feels like I've joined a community. I love going over there and working out at the West location. The gym is fantastic. I work out twice a week with Christine, and she has really helped me improve physically. I've gotten so much stronger, and I love going over to the West location and playing tennis. That's a sport that I've played my entire life. It's been hard to get back into it, but Scott has made the transition back so easy. They always provide such a wonderful experience, and that's why I love my MAC.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. Go ahead, feel your engine. Admire that perfectly installed exhaust. Your vehicle's moving along this freeway like it was made from fresh installs and a whole lot of love. With eBay Motors, you get over 122 million parts to keep it running. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, they'll be the perfect fit every time. Plus, at these prices, well, we're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Need assistance with door and window projects? The Home Depot can help. From inspiration and materials to ordering and installation, our free Millwork virtual apron service can get you moving and doing. Plus, we speak Spanish too. Our associates can help you tackle complex jobs without you leaving the job site, saving you time and money. Call us at 1-833-HD-APRON or visit homedepot.com/MVA. The Home Depot, how doers get more done.
Hey DQ fans, the $7 bacon cheeseburger meal deal will leave you and your wallet full. Grab a bacon cheeseburger and order of regular fries, a drink, and a sundae for a whole lot of happy. Only at participating DQ locations. Happy tastes good.
This is Rocky with your Sports Center update, driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Cardinals drop 3 of 4 against the Cubs over the weekend. Eric Fedde does make his Cardinals debut over the weekend as well. He went 5 innings, allowed 6 hits, got tagged for 5 earned runs, including 2 home runs in that start. Cardinals will be back in action today with a 1-game makeup against the New York Mets. It'll be Sean Manaea, the lefty, facing off for the Mets, facing off against Andre Palante for the Cardinals. Also over the weekend, St. Louis City SC falls in penalty kicks to FC Juarez in their their second group stage match in the League's Cup. They have moved on to the round of 32, and they will play Portland on Friday evening. That is your Sports Center update, driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Live from the Car Shield studio, this is the Opening Drive on 101 ESPN.
Welcome back to the Opening Drive. Brooke and BK here, and we head to the celebrity line now to chat with the voice of the Cardinals for Bally Sports Midwest, Chip Caray. Chip, how are you doing this morning?
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Oh, we're doing great, especially talking to you this Monday. Now, I have to start with this. Absolutely loved the broadcast with you and Joe Buck last week. That was so much fun. How much fun did you guys have with it?
It was great. It was the first time Joe had done a game in the pitch clock era, and he was amazed at how quickly the game went. He said, all those years I slogged through 4.5-hour Yankee Red Sox games on Saturday afternoons or nights. It made quite a change. But, look, he's terrific at what he does. He should be in the Hall of Fame. It's a joke. He's not. And to get to spend time with him and get to know him a little bit better and tell stories about his dad and Harry was a lot of fun, and I hope the audience enjoyed it because we sure did.
It was so much fun. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, last week when we talked to you, it was prior to the Cardinals and their trade deadline moves. So, of course, I want to get your reaction to that. What do you think about the Cardinals bringing in Tommy Pham, Eric Fedde, and Sean Armstrong while also shipping out Tommy Edman and Dylan Carlson?
Those moves were the things that were on the shopping list for the Cardinals. They needed another starter to lengthen the rotation. And while Fedde's first couple of innings with the Cardinals weren't particularly good, the last three or so were. And I think you'll see more of that out of him when he gets acclimated and gets back in a groove. He was nervous. He admitted as much at Wrigley Field, wanted to make a good impression. It did after the Cubs pummeled him for 5 runs in the second inning. What can you say about Tommy Pham? Look, the Cardinals have needed right-handed offense all year long, and he certainly gave us a jolt at his debut with the grand slam. Had a good offensive series against the Cubs, and he's going to bring intensity and accountability and that right-handed balance to the lineup that we're looking for. And Armstrong, another veteran guy who's been around, who's able to pitch interesting innings in the 6th or 7th for us and help give the bullpen some breathers, some breaks, and some quality innings. So from that standpoint, the Cardinals got what they wanted. And yes, you had to give up a good player. Tommy Edman hadn't played this year. Don't know when he's going to. We couldn't wait around forever and wait for that wrist to get healthy and the ankle to get healthy too. And to get quality, you have to give it up. And we wish Tommy all the best. He'll be great with the Dodgers. And we're going to see Dylan Carlson tomorrow. He's already had a home run, I think, for the Rays. So it's going to be a nice reunion to see both of those guys later on this summer.
Chip, I want to stick with the Tommy Pham edition here for just a moment because you were around those Braves that ended up going to the World Series and winning it. And they traded for a bunch of outfielders that all brought something specific to the table. Is there something about the style of player that Tommy Pham is that kind of fits in with what the Braves were able to acquire, both in terms of the on-field and off-field personality that Pham brings?
Experience, 1, and a presence, 2, and certainly 3, production. I mean, those are all important things. Like, with all respect to Tommy Edman, he was useless to the Cardinals from an on-the-field standpoint. He hadn't played. He was supposed to be ready to go this spring training and just hasn't been able to get on the field. And the Cardinals have kept waiting for that to happen, kind of like they're waiting for Goldie and Arenado to get on a really hot run here over a 2 or 3 week stretch. It just hasn't happened. And I applaud the Cardinals for saying, look, we've got to go for it here. We've got to find a way to improve this club because they still think they can get into the playoffs this year. And until Tommy was ready to go, and the emergence of Michael Siani, he kind of became an extraneous piece. And to do that, you get a guy who's going to start for you the rest of this year and next year at roughly $10 million. In today's era of starting pitching, that's an unbelievable bargain. And I think if you believe these so-called experts, the Cardinals really did an amazing job in what they gave up for what they got. And with Tommy Pham specifically, look, he's been here before. He knows the Cardinals' way. He knows how to play. He's not afraid to point out stuff that shouldn't be happening or needs to be better. And I think that's certainly going to help. And look, when you come in and you produce, you automatically get a whole lot of cachet in a locker room. And while he's only been here a few days, I'm already seeing some fingerprints of things that Cardinal fans are really going to like here over the final 2 months.
You mentioned Michael Siani, obviously a huge loss for this team defensively, and also he's been picking up offensively too. And Michael Siani's had such a great season. He's really has been a revelation for this team. How huge of a loss is this for the Cardinals?
It's big because the way the Cardinals have won is defense first. I think if you look back at what the Cardinals struggled through last year defensively, outfield play was a real problem. That hasn't been a problem since Michael stepped in. And look, he was the fourth option in center field when the season began. First, it was going to be Tommy Edman, who got hurt, as we know. Then it was going to be Lars Nootbaar. He got hurt. Then it was going to be Dylan Carlson. He got hurt. Then it was Victor Scott. He didn't hit. And then Michael was really the fifth option. I forgot about Victor. So he was the fifth option, and he was on his way to maybe winning a Gold Glove in center field. So he's going to miss a couple weeks. Obliques are not something to mess with. So Victor Scott's up. He'll get a chance to play, I would assume. He's the better defensive center fielder on the roster right now, and we'll see if the adjustments he was trying to make in the minor leagues carry over. He'll get a second audition. It won't be as wide-eyed as he was the first few weeks. And if he catches everything, I think the Cardinals will start there and see what they can build on with Victor Scott.
Chip Caray is our guest here on 101 ESPN. You'll see him on the call for the Cardinals versus the Mets. A weird 4:15 first pitch. This is the makeup game from that series. Quietly a really big one in the National League wildcard race. And Chip, on the mound today is going to be Andre Pallante, who remains in the rotation after the Lance Lynn IL stint. I'm curious for you, what have you seen that has been different from Pallante as a starter from what you saw from him as a reliever over the past couple of seasons?
I think he's been really good in rotation. I think his ERA is in the low to mid threes. He's throwing that two-seamer more. It's been a more effective pitch. It still has some work to do, but he's able to keep right-handers a little more honest. It's really been soft contact again that plagues Pallante. He'll make a really good pitch, and he'll get a number that somebody can't get to, and it's a hit, and then it leads to multiple base runners or multiple runs. He's had some bad luck. But I think Andre's very comfortable in rotation. I think he's done a nice job. He's giving the Cardinals a chance to win. He's keeping them in the games. And, look, he's not an ace. He's not your number one. He's not your number two. But when he is pitching, he's the number one that day. And he has handled the role as a starter, I think, very, very effectively. He wants to do it. He's working hard to get better. And as I said, his ability to keep right-handers honest is going to be a real, real key, especially when you have guys like Pete Alonso and J.D. Martinez facing you here today against the New York Mets.
As BK mentioned, this is a very important game tonight, and they have a very important stretch of games here coming up, kind of a gauntlet of teams that they're going to have to face. So I want you to fill in the blank, Chip. If the Cardinals make the playoffs, it will be because of this.
Offense. They got to score runs. I think we saw that in Chicago. When they score, they have a chance. When they don't, when they have long stretches where the offense goes quiet for 3 or 4 innings, it's tough to win. And I think it's been maddeningly frustrating that we see glimmers and glimpses of offense. But when the team goes cold, it's like 4 or 5 guys go cold at the same time. Right now, Alec Burleson's not feeling great at the plate. Nolan Gorman's really played himself into a platoon role for the Cardinals because he strikes out too much. Brendan Donovan's picking up hits here and there, but hasn't been as hot as we've seen. Contreras had a rough series against the Cubs. The Cardinals have to hit. They have to score runs. When they get to 4 runs, I think they're 30 games over 500. When they don't, it's a real, real struggle for them. The bullpen's been great. They're well rested. I think they're going to give them a chance to get back into the game. But by and large, the Cardinals, who keep waiting for the offensive consistency that we expected out of spring training, time is now. We've got 48, 49 games left. It's a sprint, and we'll see if the guys can start against a really good, hot New York team that's 2.5 games, I think, in front of us in the wild card race.
Well, thank you, Chip, for joining us, and hopefully you'll be wearing your bird hat tonight. Is there some lore behind the bird hat? Because it seems like the Cardinals actually do well when you wear it.
I'm just saying. I'm not taking any credit, but I'm just saying it worked the other day in Wrigley Field, and I always like irritating Gary Cohen and Ron Darling. I'll be sure to have it on tonight to welcome them to St. Louis.
All right. Thank you so much. And be sure to wear that a lot more, Chip. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks, guys. All right. We'll see you soon.
All right. That is Chip Caray. You can listen to Chip on the call tonight as the Cardinals face the Mets. First pitch is at 4:15 with Andre Pallante on the mound. Coming up next, we have Rocc Roll. Hey everyone, it's Brooke here for Universal Windows Direct. The heat has arrived and it's only going to get hotter from here. Do not cool off the outside this year. Go call my guys over at Universal Windows Direct. Well, we're all excited for it to get warmer outside and it keeps getting warmer and warmer. I love this time of year, but I don't love the energy bill that comes with it. And that's where Universal comes in handy. Their windows feature super spacer technology, which helps keeps the edge of the glass warmer, holds the windowsill longer, and makes your windows last up to 5 times longer than other Windows systems. So your windows from Universal perform better and they last longer. Schedule your free in-home estimate today, and for every 2 windows you buy, get the next 2 for free. Plus 0% financing for 36 months. That's 3 years. Restrictions apply. Universal Windows Direct backs it all up with a true lifetime warranty as long as you own the home, and a 20-year warranty to the next homeowner. Mention my name and get an additional $250 off your next project. Go to UWD.com. That's UWD.com. And like me, you'll be saying, I love my windows.
Let's rock. Let's rock today.
Welcome back to the opening drive, and we have an opportunity for you to hang out with the Jamie Rivers of 101 ESPN and Stella Artois this Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. over at Helen Fitzgerald's. Stella Artois is partnering with Hot Ones, to bring hot wings and hot trivia questions to St. Louis. Come watch the festivities this Thursday as our winning teams from our prior trivia events return to compete this Thursday's final competition. Enjoy some free Stella Artois. I just want to keep saying Stella Artois. And sampling, and your chance to have attendance prizes while you're there. That's this Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. with Jamie Rivers over at Helen Fitzgerald's. Get more info at 101ESPN.com. All right, Rocc, what do you have for Rocc and Roll?
Well, I got a trivia question really quick because we're also giving away some Green Day tickets in this segment, Brooke Grimsley.
Excuse me. Do you want me to read that one
too?
too?
Yes, please do.
All right.
Let them know.
To be fair, I do not do this often, so I'm still working on this, BK.
Okay.
All right. So here we go. So we have Green Day tickets giveaway, and you have a trivia question for us, right, Rocc?
Yes.
So we have a chance for you to win a pair of lawn tickets to see Green Day with special guest Rancid next Thursday.
You
correct?
You've never heard of them. They're a very good band.
I honestly have not.
For Def Leppard. They're taking up a residency.
They're fantastic. Good for them.
Really?
I love Rancid. They're fantastic.
Right. It's next Thursday, August 15th at Hollywood Casino Amphitheater. Text in to win free tickets to Green Day now at 314-399-9646. That is 314-399-YO-HO. And you have a trivia question. What is it?
Well, first of all, we were talking in the break about some interesting Cardinals records. BK, you had an interesting Cardinals record there for their record when they score 4 or more runs.
I did, yes.
Did you have that in front of you still? Because that's my trivia question's going off that one because that one, there you go. This one might take you a minute to find, but I'm going to throw this one out there anyway. Go ahead and throw that stat out for me.
The Cardinals this season, Chip Caray mentioned this, the Cardinals are really good when they score 4 or more runs. Now, to be fair, so are most teams across Major League Baseball. But the Cardinals specifically, 44-17 this season when they score at least 4 runs.
Now, see, that is a great stat. And you know what? I was having some trouble finding it. And so I know people will not be able to find this trivia question I'm going to very easily. And this is a different Cardinals stat relative to this season and their margin of victory, which is, this will be the first texture who gets it because this one's you have to do some Googling to find this one. What is the Cardinals' current record in one-run games?
Oh, boy.
Ooh.
Yeah, you're going to have to do some work to get these Green Day tickets, ladies and gentlemen. These aren't the tickets that you get to wait on like 6 months and then be like, oh, yeah, wait, did you guys send me my tickets? No. These are, you win. These are incredible tickets, and then you're there in like the next 10 days. So you got to do a little work, a little elbow grease in to win these tickets today. What is the Cardinals' current record in one-run games in 2024?
Is it a certain text number or
no?
just
because
the first?
it's the first one who hits
first accurate one.
First one that gets there accurately will go, and if someone's within a game or two, they'll be closest to the pin. I expect somebody to be able to find.
I was hoping that you would do like favorite Green Day song. Like what is Rocky's favorite Green Day song?
Oh, I can't pick one off the top of my head. That's tricky.
Rocc, what do you have for us today, my man?
Well, I just want to talk a little bit about something we haven't got to talk about from over the weekend, and that was last night's St. Louis City SC game against FC Juarez, where they drew. Because that's what this team does best. They were able to score a goal, and then they immediately allowed FC Juarez to score against them. Also something this team is very good at, which is letting up a goal immediately after scoring one. But there still were some positivities. Obviously, we are inside the transfer window, so things can fluctuate, and they have been fluctuating. You added 3 new attackers in the window, including St. Louis University graduate, or former player, I should say, Simon Bescher. He scored his first ever City goal last night for the 1 tally for St. Louis City. So there's a lot of positives to go with actually seeing some offensive additions. I wonder what that's like for a St. Louis team. But unfortunately, it did all get a little bit curdled there at the end because they did actually lose the game in penalty kicks. It was the first ever session of penalty kicks that St. Louis City has ever been a part of, and they lost 4-1. A little bit of a controversy over the third one when Ben Lunt got a save, and then because he came off his line, they had Ortega redo his penalty kick. He then buried that one and sent St. Louis City packing for the game. The good news, though, is that in the group stage of the League's Cup, they had already advanced. So the game was kind of just playing for seeding. And so even though they did lose, they will still be in the round of 32, and they will actually get to host the Portland Timbers on Friday evening at City Park. Last time I checked, there's not a game time on that game just yet. So you might saw that City lost
9:30. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but that's what ESPN says.
Please tell me that's not actually Central Time. My God.
I think it is.
That's horrible. But anyhow, you might have saw City lost, but it's not the worst thing in the world. They're still moving on. They still got another game to play next week, and that's good because they need game time, because all those new players need time, because they still need to gel if City wants to go to the playoffs. We had John Hackworth on the show on Friday, and he said what his basically plan was to get to the playoffs is they got to win 7 out of 9, and a lot of those games are away, and so this team has to be a very different team than the one we saw go into the League's Cup break when they come out. So far, they have looked differently, but the fact that you can't put a team away like FC Juarez after taking a 1-0 lead is still a little bit concerning.
Did you hear from Lutz this weekend on any of the moves and transactions that they've done here recently?
So the Horn one, he should be getting here soon, and I
let's take that to a separate side. What did he say about Tim Parker?
I mean, listen, the Tim Parker deal is they obviously were sad to see a leader go, but the deal makes too much sense. He's an aging player on an expiring contract, and you traded for a guy who you have control of for the next 2 years, who's 5 years younger. It's the most sensible trade that a team can possibly make. You have a declining asset who also isn't wrapped up in a contract, and apparently the reports are going that the contract extension discussions were not going very well on either side of the discussion, for that matter, and so you're not going to have him for next year. Again, I think there's also the fact that Tim Parker wasn't the dominating center back at times that he was last year. And part of that's probably because the other center back next to him was never a consistent thing, because Joachim Nielsen was getting hurt, Kyle Hebert was having to go up to Canada, and center backs kind of have like an offensive line in NFL kind of thing, where it's like, it's not necessarily the skill of the players involved, it's how often they can just cohesively work together so they know every single movement and connection. And so he just wasn't the exact same level of player as he was last year. You're obviously going to lose a lot of impact in the locker room because this is a guy that had one of the armbands, but I just think long-term, considering that this isn't a playoff team right now, it's a move that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's just always hard to see somebody like that go. I do understand it. I understand the reasoning behind it. It makes a lot of sense. But at the same time, Tim Parker was a part of a lot of history. I know very new history, but still so many special moments during his time here with City SC.
Yeah, he'll always be the answer to the trivia question: who scored the first goal in St. Louis City SC history? Tim Parker, forever. Like that will never change. He provided us one of the great moments in St. Louis soccer history, you know? So we'll always be appreciative of that, and him being a huge piece of a awesome first year here in St. Louis. But now, like, the team's going in a very different direction.
It is.
He's getting older, not younger, and they needed to get something in return when the negotiations for the contract ended up going a little sideways, it sounds like. So I get it. It's probably the smart move, sensible move. But, you know, it's one of the guys that had, in Rockio's language, the armband on. So It's not an easy move to make, certainly, if you're in Lewis's role.
And just look at how different this team looks from, June 31st when Bradley Carnell's the head coach and you have Tim Parker as one of your assistant captains, and you don't have 3 new attackers and another defender and a midfield/defender. And there's a lot of things that have happened, and I have a feeling that the moves are not done, mainly because there was a little bit of a off the field kind of topic brewing at the end of the game when one of the players on the City bench did not join the rest of his teammates to line up and watch the penalty kicks, and the coaching staff did not seem too happy with that. The reported there was that Jabulo Blum was not joining the team in the line to watch penalty kicks, so that's a little bit of an odd thing there.
What's going on with this team?
Yeah, this sounds like a lot.
I think there's players who were integral parts of a team last year that had a lot of success, and they, alongside the team, started to struggle, and therefore the team pulled back some of those minutes, and the players didn't respond to that the way you'd want them to, which is, I got to go out there and fight for my minutes, and instead it was more of a negative, why are you taking my minutes away? I was part of this team last year. And that's because it's, what have you done for me lately? That's just not that's not just an NFL thing. That's sports, baby. What have you done for me lately? Sure. And players started lagging a little bit, and so you had to change things and get better at those spots. And clearly, some of those players weren't too happy. Sam Adeniran didn't seem too happy with his playing time. Jabulo Blum got pushed out by Chris Durkin, and now Jake Girdwood-Reich, one of the players they added at the transfer deadline, has been one of the main subs for City to go into the midfield late in games as a defensive substitution. He can also play center back, but right now he's playing midfield, which is supposed to be Jabulo Blum's spot. And so those minutes have disappeared, and I imagine he's not too happy about that. But again, that's just speculation. I'm not sure why he didn't join. All we know is the actual facts, which is he was on the sideline, not joining his team in the PK run, and then there's other facts of how much he played last year and how much he's played this year. Do with it what you will with those facts combined. I can't stop you.
I just want to go back to the magic of last year at the beginning of the season.
Yes, so before the final month.
Yes. Yeah, before the final month. I want to repeat that magic. I think it's just hard for the fact that you had a great start to your inaugural season, except for the ending portion, of course. You didn't want to see that. And then to see how quickly things have changed in just a matter of even less than a year, I think is shocking.
Yeah. Sorry, one of the texters got mad at me. He said, your genius producer just said June 31st. Please stop him from talking. Wow. What a blithering mistake. My bad, June 30th.
It reminds me a lot of what happened with the Cardinals, where like that September of 2022 basically became like the beginning of the end of that era of Cardinals baseball, because you had Ryan Helsley with the thumb issue.
With the thumb,
You had Waino, who had the knee issue that year. Both Goldie and Arenado did not hit like themselves going into the postseason, and then the next year they didn't look like themselves either. There's a lot of similarities between that final month for the Cardinals portending failures of the 2023 season and the last month of last season showing us what this year was probably going to end up being like.
By the way, the 2024 Cardinals are 21-15 in one-run games. Good job to a couple of texters who hit that right on the nail. Congratulations to 573 for walking away with those Green Day tickets.
Ooh, lucky winner there. I want to go see Green Day now. I didn't realize they were coming to town, so now I have to get tickets to that. I'll have to figure out a different way other than trivia. BK, thank you so much. How? What?
How are you going to get tickets? Man, that's crazy.
I guess I'll pay. Hey, I got to see last week the Red Hot Chili Peppers, thanks to Matthew Chambers, who had some extra tickets for us. They are so good live, by the way. Nobody asked, but I just want to tell you guys they're really good live. And I just kind of want to do a humble brag that I was able to go there.
Sure,
so you didn't get to go. You had a podcast to do, so I think that's really fair.
Yeah, they canceled on me to go to Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Oh,
that's fantastic.
No, it's not.
All right, thank you so much for joining us today, BK. This was great.
Appreciate it as always.
Another Monday, and you are not pulling a doubleheader today, correct?
No, we've got a producer party coming up at 11. T-Bone's going to be in with various producers for the 3 hours, so they're going to have a bunch of fun with that. Looking forward to it. Balloon party coming up next.
All right. Thank you, Rocc.
Pleasure.
And thank you all for listening. The Balloon Party is coming up next.